Welcome, dear traveler. Tonight, you and I will leave behind the hum of the modern world. We will step quietly into a different time, a different place. One where the pace of life was measured, not by clocks and screens, but by the sun, the moon, and the turning of the seasons. This is surviving a medieval winter, life in the cold ages along, slow journey into a world of deep snow, flickering firelight, and quiet survival. We will wander through frost-covered fields and narrow lanes, past timber-framed cottages and frozen rivers. We will listen to the wind as it curls through bare branches, and we will feel the soft, steady heat of a hearth as we rest inside. Before we begin, let us prepare the mind and body for this gentle journey. Take a deep, slow breath in, hold it for a moment, and let it out softly. Feel your shoulders relax. Allow the muscles along your neck to loosen. Let your hands rest comfortably. Where they are, your fingers soft, your palms warm. Take another breath in, imagining the air filling not just your lungs, but your whole body with calm. And then breathe it out, letting go of any weight you have carried through the day as you rest here. Picture a heavy woolen blanket laid across you, the kind woven by patient hands in a medieval cottage. Its fibers are thick and slightly scratchy, but warm, so warm that the cold air around you cannot reach your skin. The firelight flickers against the walls, casting shadows that sway gently, like the silhouettes of dancers moving in time with the flames. Listen. Can you hear it? The faint, far-off sound of winter wind sweeping across the land. It is a sound that belongs to open fields, to silent forests, to snow drifting down from a heavy sky. There is no rush in this place, no sharpness to the noise only. The slow sigh of wind moving past now the modern world begins to fade. The faint ticking of your clock, the glow of streetlights outside your window. The hum of distant traffic, all of it falls away. In its place comes the muffled stillness of the Middle Ages in winter. The year is perhaps 1340 or 1450. Or another cold year entirely. The exact date is unimportant, for here time is measured differently. The days are short, the nights long. The sun climbs only briefly above the horizon before sinking again into darkness. You stand at the edge of a small village, snow crunching under your boots. The cold air is crisp, biting at your nose and cheeks, filling your breath with pale clouds. The smell of smoke drifts faintly through the airwood smoke. Sharp and earthy, the sign of life and warmth ahead. The houses before you are small and close together, built of timber frames with wattle and daub walls, their roofs thickly thatched. Snow has gathered on the thatch, lying in uneven mounds. Thin trails of smoke rise from stone chimneys, curling upward into the gray winter sky. The windows are tiny, some covered with oiled parchment instead of glass, letting in just enough daylight to soften the dark interiors. As you step into the lane between the cottages, you hear the muffled sounds of life within. Somewhere, a woman hums softly as she kneads dough. A man coughs near the fire. A child giggles before being hushed. The village is alive, but quietly so, its people conserving energy for the long, cold season. You approach one cottage's wooden door, slightly warped from years of weather. When it opens, the air changes instantly. The chill is replaced by a rush of heat from the fire inside, carrying with it the mingled scents of wood smoke, drying herbs, and something cooking slowly in a pot. You are welcomed in with a nod and a soft smile. Inside, the light is dim, the walls close, but the hearth is bright and alive. The fire pops gently, its warmth reaching your face. The family here wears thick layers wool tunics, cloaks, and simple leather shoes lined with fur. A heavy woolen blanket is pressed into your hands and you drape it around your shoulders. Here, in the Middle Ages, warmth is never taken for granted. Every log of firewood has been carried from the forest, chopped by hand and carefully stored under cover to keep it dry. The villagers take turns tending the fire through the night, for if it dies, it takes great effort to relight it in the morning cold. Outside, the snow continues to fall. You can hear it against the roof of soft, constant whisper. In the byre, just beyond the cottage wall, animals shift in their stalls. The cows, sheep, and goats share their body heat with the humans. 4. In many homes, people and livestock live close together during the winter months. It is not a matter of luxury, it is a matter of survival. As you settle by the fire, you notice how different the pace of life feels here. There is no rush, no frantic motion. The day is filled with slow tasks: mending a torn cloak, weaving thread into cloth, repairing tools, and telling stories to pass the time. The sound of a spindle turning is steady and hypnotic. A wooden ladle stirs the pot over the fire, its movement unhurried. Outside, the wind picks up again, rattling the wooden shutters. The night comes early. By mid-afternoon, the light begins to fade and shadows stretch long across the floor. Candles and rushlights are lit small flames that give just enough glow to see by. They're light, golden, and soft. The fire becomes the center of the world in winter. People sit close to it, talking quietly, eating in its warmth. Stories are told, old tales passed down from parents to children, from one winter to the next. You hear a low voice begin a story about a winter so cold the river froze so deeply that carts could be driven across it, or about wolves seen near the edge of the forest, their eyes glowing in the dark. But tonight, there are no wolves, no danger, only the sound of the fire and the wind, and the steady, slow heartbeat of winter. Life. Breathe in deeply now, letting the warm air of the cottage fill you with comfort. And breathe out, letting go of any remaining thoughts of the world outside this story. You are safe here, wrapped in wool, surrounded by the slow, steady rhythm of a medieval winter night. The snow falls on, the fire burns low, and you are warm, still, and ready to drift deeper into this world of the cold ages. The evening settles fully now, as though the whole world has exhaled and grown still. The last traces of daylight are gone, replaced by a darkness that is thick and velvety, wrapping the village in its quiet embrace. In this medieval winter, darkness is not feared, it is accepted. Night is as much a part of life as the daylight hours, and in its deep, unbroken shadow there is a kind of peace. Without the glow of electric lamps or the restless pull of constant noise, the world is allowed to rest. The only light comes from the hearth, its flames glowing deep orange, casting a slow dance of shadows on the uneven walls. A single tallow candle burns on the table, its flames small but steady. The smell of it is faintly animal, a reminder that even light here comes from the land, from the work of hands, from the life of the animals tended through the year. You are seated on a sturdy bench near the fire, your back warmed by the heat, your feet resting on a fur pelt spread across the floor to keep the cold from seeping through. A clay mug of warm ale is placed in your hands, the liquid slightly spiced, its heat radiating into your fingers. As you take a slow sip, the flavor is rich and earthy, nothing like the drinks of the modern world, but comforting in a way that speaks of home and hearth. Around you, the rhythms of the household continue in their unhurried way. A woman in a woolen kirtle sits near the fire, her hands busy with needle and thread, repairing a small tear in a heavy cloak. The older man at the far end of the room is sharpening a knife on a whetstone, the soft scraping sound steady and deliberate. A child, wrapped in layers, curls on a low bed stuffed with straw, already slipping into sleep under the glow of the fire. Outside the thick wooden walls, the world is locked in the stillness of snow. The wind occasionally rattles the shutters, but the thick thatch and carefully sealed joints hold firm. Every so often you hear a faint creak from the roof beams as they settle against the weight of the snow, a sound that might seem ominous in the modern world, but here it is simply part of the language of winter, a sign that the roof is doing its job, bearing the load as it has done for many seasons. The air inside is warm and carries the smell of herbs hung from the beams above, rosemary, thyme, and sage, dried in the summer and stored for winter use. Their presence is more than culinary. They also serve to freshen the air and, in some cases, help ward off illness during the long months indoors. In the corner of the room, a lidded chest holds the family's most precious goods: spare linens, tools, perhaps a few coins, and clothing for better days. These items are well cared for because in a medieval winter, nothing can be wasted. If a tunic tears, it is mended. If a tool breaks, it is repaired. The idea of simply replacing something is not part of this world. The family speaks in low tones. The conversation's simple but warm. They talk of who will go to the woods tomorrow to gather more firewood, of whether the snow will stop by morning, of which neighbors have traded for fresh eggs or honey. These topics might seem small, but in the quiet rhythms of medieval life, they are the threads that hold the season together as you sit listening. The sound of the wind outside begins to fade, replaced by a stillness so deep you can almost hear the snow itself, soft, relentless, falling in the dark. In the village lanes, the fresh snow covers the tracks of feet and carts, smoothing the ground until it looks untouched, like a clean sheet of parchment. You imagine stepping outside for a moment into the frozen air. The cold would bite instantly, the kind that pricks your skin and makes the inside of your nose sting. Your breath would turn to a pale cloud before your face, rising into the night. Above, the stars would be bright and sharp, scattered across the black sky. With no city lights to compete, their glow would be astonishing, more stars than you might have ever seen in the modern day. But soon, the pull of the fire would draw you back inside. Your hands would thaw near the hearth, your cheeks tingling. As the warmth returned, you would feel, deep in your bones, that you were safe here, that this house, this fire, this family, and this moment were a small fortress against the cold world beyond. Now, the older man sets down his sharpening stone and begins to speak, not loudly, but with the slow confidence of someone who has told this story many times. It is about a winter long ago, colder than any in living memory, when the river froze so completely that a fair was held upon it. Stalls and tents stood right on the ice, and people walked from one side to the other as though it were solid ground. He speaks of brightly colored cloth, steaming pots of food, and music played on fiddles and pipe-saw. In the middle of the frozen river, the younger members of the household listen with wide eyes, some skeptical, others eager to believe. In a place where winter can feel endless, a story of celebration in the heart of the cold is a treasure. You listen too, letting the cadence of his voice wash over you. The fire crackles softly. The candle's flame wavers as a draft slips through a crack in the wall. The air smells faintly of the stew simmering over the fire, a mixture of root, vegetables, dried beans, and perhaps a sliver of meat saved for tonight. The hours pass without hurry. Time is not measured in minutes here, but in the slow progress of the fire's embers, in the dimming of the candle, in the weight of the woolen blankets drawn closer. Eventually, the tasks of the evening wind down. The needle is set aside. The knife is sheathed. The last logs are added to the fire. The stew pot is taken from the hook and set aside for morning. One by one, the family settles into their places for the night in low wooden beds, on pallets of straw or wrapped in blankets near the hearth. Someone murmurs a short prayer in the dimness, not loud enough to break the peace. The only light now comes from the fire, burning low but steady, its warmth radiating into the stillness. You feel your own body grow heavier, your breath slower. The firelight reflects in your half-closed eyes, and the sounds of the cottage soft breathing, the occasional rustle of a blanket, the faint shifting of the animals outside become a kind of lullaby. The medieval winter night is long, but it did. is gentle in its way. Outside, the snow continues to fall, covering the land in a fresh, untouched layer. Inside, the warmth is constant, the peace unbroken. You are a guest here, welcomed into this rhythm, this quiet heartbeat of another time. And as you let your mind drift further from the waking world, you realize you are already beginning to sleep in the Middle Ages. When you next open your eyes, the firelight has dimmed to a soft glow. The night has passed quietly, and the pale light of early morning slips in through the cracks in the shutters. It is winter in the later Middle Ages. Perhaps the year is 1387, though no one here would mark time in the way you do now. The people of this village reckon their days by feast days, by harvests, by the length of the sun's arc in the sky. The season is deep. The solstice has passed. Yet the cold remains steadfast, lingering over the land like a great white cloak. Snow lies heavy on every surface, the roofs, the frozen lanes, the branches of bare trees, each limb outlined in frost. The air is so crisp it almost rings when you breathe. You rise from your bed, a low frame filled with straw, covered in woolen blankets. The room is cool, your breath visible in the morning light. Your feet find the sheepskin laid beside the bed. Its softness and faint animal scent a comfort in this stark season. The cottage around you is small but solid. Built with wattle and daub walls, their wooden framework filled with a mixture of clay, straw, and earth. The roof above is thatched, its thick layers designed to hold warmth in and shed snow before it becomes too heavy. In the corner, the hearth still smolders from the night before, a banked fire that can be coaxed back to life with a careful hand and fresh wood. Outside the door, the village waits in the cold. You step into thick boots, pull on a cloak fastened with a simple pin, and wrap your hands in woolen mitts. The wooden latch lifts with a faint creak, and the winter air rushes in, sharp, biting, yet so clean it seems to wash the very inside of your lungs. The world before you is still and white. The cottages are scattered in a loose ring, each with smoke drifting from its chimney. Beyond them lie the fields, sleeping now under their blanket of snow, and beyond that, the edge of the forest, dark and silent in the pale light. The path through the village is narrow, worn smooth by countless feet over the years, though today it is muffled in snow. Here and there you see footprints, some fresh, some half-filled by new flakes. A neighbor passes you, head down against the cold, carrying a bundle of firewood on their back. Their breath fogs the air, and their footsteps crunch softly as they vanish into the distance. The village church stands a little apart from the homes, its stone walls gray and rough-hewn. The bell in its small wooden tower is still silent. It will not ring until the hour for morning prayers. Around it, the churchyard lies quiet, its stones half buried in snow, each marking the resting place of someone whose winters are now. Past as you walk, you notice the sounds of winter here, the faint groan of ice shifting on the river nearby, the distant caw of a raven circling above, the occasional sharp crack as a branch, heavy with ice, gives way in the forest. These sounds are sparse but vivid, carrying easily in the cold air. At the edge of the village, the river runs slow and dark beneath a skin of ice. In the shallows, the water is frozen solid, but in the deeper channel, it still moves, whispering. Beneath its glassy cover, children sometimes play here in safer spots, sliding across the ice, but today it is empty. The game abandoned in the deeper freeze. You pause for a moment, taking in the view. Across the water, you see open land dotted with leafless trees, their branches etched in frost. The world feels vast and quiet, every sound amplified, every movement deliberate. Back in the village, the day's work begins despite the cold. A woman steps from her cottage carrying a wooden bucket, heading for the communal well. A man emerges from the small byre beside his home. leading a shaggy cow out for a quick watering before returning her to the warm stall. Smoke thickens above the chimneys as more fires are lit, carrying with it the smell of burning oak and pine. The air holds other scents too. Faint but distinct, the earthy aroma of damp wool, the tank of cured meats hanging from rafters, the sharpness of cold iron from tools left outdoors overnight. This is not a hurried world. The rhythm of life in a medieval winter is set by necessity, not by clocks. Work begins with the light and ends with the dark. There is time to pause and greet a neighbor, to share a moment of conversation about the weather or the health of the animals. As you move through the village, you are not an outsider here in this telling. You are part of this world. People greet you by name. They ask if your hearth is warm, if you have enough wood for the coming week, if the roof has held under the snow. Their concern is genuine, for in winter, survival is a shared endeavor. You visit the blacksmith's workshop, a small, low building, with its forge banked low to save fuel. Tools hang neatly along the walls: hammers, tongs, chisels, each worn smooth by years of use. The air smells faintly of charcoal and iron. The blacksmith nods to you, pausing in his work to blow gently on the embers before adding a small piece of coal. The hiss and pop of the fire are steady, rhythmic, almost like breathing. From there, you make your way to the edge of the forest. Here, the snow is deeper, undisturbed except for the tracks of deer and the occasional fox. The trees stand tall and silent, their trunks dark against the pale ground. A few evergreen boughs still hold their needles, offering a touch of green in an otherwise monochrome world. Woodcutters work quietly here, axes rising and falling in slow, deliberate strokes. They speak little, their focus on the task. Each log is precious, each branch carried back to the village with care. Firewood is not simply a comfort here. It is the difference between warmth and bitter cold, between survival and danger. As the morning passes, you return to the village, following the narrow path back toward the sound of the church bell. Tone is low and resonant, carrying across the snow-covered fields. People emerge from their homes, cloaked and hooded, and make their way toward the church. The door stands open, and warm light spills into the cold air, inviting them inside. You step in with them. The interior is dim but welcoming, the air warmer than outside. The walls are bare stone, and the wooden beams overhead are dark with age. A few candles burn on the altar, their flames steady. The priest's voice is calm and low, his words familiar to the villagers. The service is brief, ending with a blessing for safety and health through the cold days ahead. When you emerge again into the daylight, the sun has climbed higher, though its warmth is faint. The village seems more alive now, doors open, smoke rising steadily, voices carrying across the crisp air. You take one last slow breath, feeling the cold fill your lungs, tasting the clarity of it before returning to the cottage. Inside, the fire has been built up again, and the smell of bread baking on the hearth fills the room. Your seat by the fire waits, the warmth ready to wrap around you once more. You are fully here now in the heart of a medieval winter, part of a world where each day is shaped by the land, the season, and the shared effort to endure. The story has only just begun. The morning light grows stronger, though here in winter it will never be bright and sharp the way it is in summer. The sun rides low in the sky, a pale silvery disk filtering through the thin veil of clouds. Shadows are long even at midday, and light glints faintly on the frost, making every surface seem dusted with tiny stars. You step back inside your cottage, shutting the wooden door against the chill. Inside, the air is warmer, scented with smoke and the faint sweetness of grain baking in the pot beside the hearth. The sound of crackling wood is steady now, a reassuring rhythm that promises comfort. On the table, a simple breakfast waits. Course. Bread, baked from barley flour milled in the village's watermill before the freeze set in, and a small wedge of hard cheese. In a clay mug, a steaming drink made from warmed ale mixed with a pinch of honey. These are the staples of a winter's morning, not luxurious, but sustaining. You sit by the fire, tearing a piece of bread, feeling its rough crust against your fingertips. The cheese is firm and faintly sharp. It has been aging in the cool pantry since the summer. The warm ale chases away the lingering chill in your chest. You can almost hear the land itself resting beyond the walls, fields and hedgerows waiting for the thaw before life can quicken again. In this season, the rhythm of the day is dictated by necessity. There is no idle wandering, no wasted movement. Every task serves the simple purpose of surviving until spring. Once you finish eating, you pull your cloak tight and head outside again. The snow crunches beneath your boots, its sound oddly satisfying in the stillness. A group of women are gathered near one of the larger cottages, their skirts tucked high to keep them from dragging in the snow. They are carding wool, a slow, patient task. Their hands move rhythmically, teasing apart the tangled fibers to prepare them for spinning. The wool itself is from the village's sheep, shorn in late spring and stored for use through the year. Now, in winter, the work of turning that wool into thread is essential. Thick yarn will be spun on drop spindles and later woven into cloth for cloaks, hoods, and blankets. Every garment is a shield against the cold. You greet them quietly, and one of the women, her cheeks flushed from the cold, smiles and nods toward you. She offers a small bundle of wool for you to try. The fibers are soft but stubborn, clinging to one another until your fingers coax them apart. You can feel the warmth in them already, the promise of protection against the wind. From there, you make your way toward the byre where the animals are kept. Inside, it is dim but warmer than outside, the body heat of the livestock holding the cold at bay. Cows stand in their stalls, chewing slowly, their breath steaming in the air. Chickens roost on wooden beams, feathers puffed for insulation. A single pig roots lazily through straw in its pen, turning over scraps for any morsel of interest. Animals are as vital to survival here as the fields are in summer. Milk from the cows, eggs from the hens, meat from the pigs, all these sustain the people of the village through the lean months. Each animal is fed carefully, their fodder rationed to last until pasture returns in spring. You help carry a bundle of hay from the loft, the dry scent filling the air as you shake it into the mangers. The cows blink slowly at you, their dark eyes calm. One nudges your hand, seeking a treat, perhaps a crust of bread or a few dried apple slices from the stores. These quiet moments in the byre are a reminder that survival is not just a human struggle. It is shared with every living creature in the village. When you step back outside, the cold feels sharper after the warmth of the byre. You see a small group of men and older boys at the edge of the village preparing to head into the forest. They carry axes and wooden sleds, ready to bring back fresh firewood. In winter, the demand for fuel never lessens. The hearths must burn day and night. You decide to walk part of the way with them. The forest is silent, except for the occasional rustle of a bird in the branches above. Snow muffles sound, making even the swing of an axe seem subdued. The men work in pairs, one cutting while the other rests, conserving their energy. Logs are cut to manageable lengths and loaded onto sleds to be dragged back to the village. It is heavy work, and they move slowly, careful to avoid injury in the bitter cold. When you part ways, you return toward the sound of a faint, steady hum, the water mill. Even in winter, the mill is used when the river's flow allows. Today, part of the wheel turns sluggishly, ice forming on its paddles. But the miller still manages to grind small amounts of grain. He greets you warmly, his cheeks red from the cold. Inside, the air is filled with the scent of freshly milled flour, a smell that feels almost like summer back in the village. Midday approaches. The sun hangs low, yet this is as high as it will climb. People return to their homes for the main meal of the day. Pottage, a thick stew made from whatever is available. Onions, leeks, dried peas, perhaps a few slices of salted meat or fish. The pot hangs over the fire, its contents simmering slowly for hours until flavors blend. You share in the meal at your own hearth. The stew is simple, but it is hot and filling. The steam fogs the air above the bowl, and you breathe it in before tasting. Each spoonful is a small comfort, warmth radiating from your core outward. After eating, the afternoon is spent in quiet, necessary work. In one home, someone repairs a broken wooden bucket, using careful strokes of a knife to smooth a replacement stave. In another, children sit close to their grandmother as she tells stories, tales of saints, of ancient kings, of winters long past when snow lay even deeper and the cold bit harder. These stories are not just entertainment. They carry the memory of how others endured and survived. You take time to mend your own cloak, drawing the needle slowly through the thick wool. The thread is spun from the same sheep's wool you felt earlier, dyed with plants gathered months ago. Each stitch feels like an act of preservation, a small defiance against the cold as the afternoon light begins to fade. Earlier than you might expect, preparations for evening begin. Extra wood is brought in from the store. The animals are checked and settled for the night. Candles are lit, their golden glow softening the shadows that creep into the corners of the room. Outside, the air grows colder still, the snow reflecting the faint light of the rising moon. The village seems to draw inward, each home a small island of warmth in the frozen world. You find yourself by the fire once more. Hands wrapped around a cup of warm cider, listening to the low murmur of voices outside a pair of neighbors, speaking as they pass, their words carrying clearly in the still night air. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, then all is quiet again. This is life in the heart of a medieval winter, steady, deliberate, shaped by the cold, yet rich in small acts of care and endurance. Every person, every task, every breath taken in the sharp air is part of the shared story of survival, and as you settle deeper into your seat, the fire's glow playing across the walls, you realize that in this world, winter is not simply endured. It is met with patience, skill, and a quiet strength that binds the village together until the first green shoots appear once more. You rise before the sun, as most do in the cold months, because in winter there is no reason to linger in bed once the fire's embers have cooled. The air inside the cottage holds a kind of deep chill, the kind that seems to settle into your bones before you've even stood. You can see your breath in the dim light, drifting like faint smoke toward the thatched ceiling. From the corner, a faint glow stirs where last night's fire slept under its blanket of ash. The coals are stubborn, but with a few well-placed breaths and the addition of dry twigs, they begin to crackle again, pushing back the icy weight of the room. The first burst of warmth feels like a small victory. In a medieval winter, these little triumphs matter. The rest of the household is stirring too. Across the single-room space, a heavy wool curtain hangs, dividing the bed from the rest of the living area. A rustle behind it tells you that someone else has woken a quiet shifting of blankets. The dull thump of feet touching the cold floor. In winter, every movement is deliberate. The simple act of getting dressed is done in stages, layer after layer, until the body is encased in linen, wool, and sometimes fur, if one is lucky enough to own it. The cottage walls are rough timber daubed, with a mix of clay and straw. They keep out most of the wind, though here and there a draft still whispers through. These homes were not built for luxury, but for survival. Low ceilings to trap heat, thick walls to blunt the cold, and a hearth that serves as both kitchen and heart of the household. From a small wooden chest near the wall, the day's first food emerges, coarse bread, baked days earlier, still dense and hearty enough to fill the stomach. A clay pot of ale or watered beer sits ready, it's safer to drink than water this time of year, when the well can harbor illnesses that thrive in still, icy conditions. The brew is weak, meant more for hydration than cheer, but the slight warmth it gives the body is welcome. Before the main work of the day begins, there are tasks to tend to. The fire needs more fuel, and that means a trip outside to the woodpile. You step into your boots stiff with frost and push open the wooden door. The outside world greets you with a quiet so complete you can hear the faint creak of the frost shifting on the branches. The snow crunches underfoot as you make your way toward the stacked logs, each one dark with moisture from melted snow that refroze in the night. Gathering wood is a chore in any season, but in winter it becomes urgent without it. The hearth dies, and with it, comfort and safety. You bring in the load, setting it beside the fire where it will dry. The warmth of the hearth begins to seep into the logs, releasing the faint, sweet scent of sap. This will be the rhythm, all defeating the fire, cooking over it, warming hands and feet in its glow, and guarding it against dying out. Beyond the cottage walls, the village is waking. You can hear the muffled thump of boots on packed snow, the whinny of a horse from the small stable, the low murmur of voices greeting one another in the pale morning light. Winter's work is slower, but it is constant, feeding animals, breaking ice for water, mending tools that will be needed when the thaw comes. You step out again, this time toward the center of the village. The well is still shrouded in morning frost, its rope stiff and brittle. A man is there already, lowering the bucket with steady hands. When it comes up, the water inside is so cold that mist rises from it in the air. He nods to you, a brief greeting, before pouring it into a wooden pail and starting the slow walk back to his home. Farther down the path, a woman scatters grain for her hens, who cluck and scratch in the thin layer of straw spread over the snow. She moves quickly, her scarf pulled tight against her face, her boots crunching as she heads back toward her door. Every moment outside is measured. Even simple chores are done with efficiency to keep the cold from creeping too deep into the body. The church bell rings, one's a hollow, measured sound that seems to linger over the village before dissolving into the crisp air. In winter, its call is rarer. Services are shorter, and the walk there can be treacherous when ice covers the lanes. Yet the bell's sound is a thread tying everyone together, a reminder of the shared rhythm that governs life here by midday. The pale sun hangs low, offering little warmth but bathing the snow in a soft, silvery light. The sky feels closer in winter, as though the clouds have drawn down to keep the earth company. In this season, time is measured not by the length of the day, but by the tasks that must be completed before darkness falls. In the fields beyond the village, men work in small groups, repairing fences that the weight of snow has bent. They wear thick woolen tunics and leather boots lined with sheepskin, their breath rising in steady clouds as they hammer wooden posts back into place. The ground is too hard to till, so the fields lie fallow, resting under their icy covering. Yet work here never stops entirely. There is always something to mend, something to prepare. Near the edge of the forest, you see a different kind of labor. A hunter returns from the trees, his sled carrying a small deer, its coat dusted with frost. This is no sport, it is survival. In winter, fresh meat is rare, and such a catch will be shared among families, smoked or salted to last as long as possible. The hunter moves with care, the sled's runners hissing softly over the snow, his eyes scanning the path ahead as though already thinking of the next venture into the woods. Back in the village, smoke rises from every chimney now. The scent of cooking drifts on the air, onions stewing in a heavy iron pot, salted pork sizzling slowly, the faint sweetness of turnips softening over the fire. Kitchens in these homes are humbled no more than a hearth, with a hook for the pot and a flat stone for baking, but they produce meals that are nourishing, designed to keep the body strong through long, cold nights. By late afternoon, the light begins to fade again, the horizon shifting from pale silver to shades of blue and violet. Villagers move more quickly now, finishing outdoor tasks before the deep cold returns. The woodpiles are checked and covered, animals are fed one last time, and doors are barred against the wind. Inside the cottages, the evening settles in layers. Children are brought close to the fire, their cheeks pink from the cold, their fingers wrapped around wooden mugs of warm broth. Elders tell stories, some about saints and miracles, others about long winters past when snow came earlier and stayed longer. These tales are not just entertainment. They are threads of memory, tying the present to the past as darkness deepens. The only light comes from the fire and small tallow candles, their flames steady in the still air. Shadows dance along the timber walls, and the room feels smaller, closer, as though the world beyond the door has been pushed far away. The wind picks up outside, rattling the shutters and sending a fine dust of snow swirling across the lanes. But here, inside, the warmth holds. You can feel it in your fingertips, in the slow relaxation of muscles that no longer need to brace against the cold. This is the medieval winter's gift, the stillness of night, the comfort of fire. The knowledge that for now, you are safe within the walls you have built. The day's rhythm has been simple, yet full. Every task, from drawing water to mending tools, has been a step in the quiet dance of survival. And as the fire burns low and the last words of a story drift into silence, the village settles once more into the deep, unbroken quiet of a winter night, ready to rise again when the faint glow of dawn touches the frost. The day is waning. But in a medieval winter, the approach of night feels less like the end of a day and more like the arrival of another season short. Dark and enclosed, the pale sunlight is already slipping lower, casting long, slanted shadows across the snow-packed paths. The villagers seem to move in quiet agreement now, each one making the same calculation: finish what must be done before darkness closes the world outside. You stand for a moment on the village lane, taking in the scene. Thin trails of smoke curl from every chimney, dark against the faintly golden sky. The soundscape is gentle, a steady creak of leather harnesses as a cart is wheeled to its storage shed, the muffled clink of a blacksmith's hammer as he finishes his last piece before the light fades, the slow rhythmic crunch of boots as neighbors head home. The air has shifted. It feels heavier now, as if the night is pressing forward from beyond the tree line. The cold is sharper, too, the kind that makes your breath plume more quickly, that nips at the skin even through thick wool. The livestock must be tended before true dark. You follow the path to the small barn on the edge of the village, its wooden planks pale with frost. Inside, the air is warmer, humid with the smell of hay and animals. The cows stand quietly in their stalls, their dark eyes reflecting the glow. From the single lantern, their breath steams in the air, and you hear the soft swish of tails, the occasional low, rumbling moo. Buckets of feed are poured, fresh straw is spread, and each animal is checked for signs of illness. In winter, disease can spread quickly, especially when beasts are kept close together for warmth. A hen flaps briefly from her perch, settling again with a rustle of feathers. Outside, a dog barks short, sharp, and then silent again. From the barn, you can see the last sliver of sun dipping behind the hills. The snow catches the fading light, glowing faintly pink, before surrendering to the deepening blue of twilight. You draw your cloak tighter around you and head back toward the heart of the village. On the way, you pass the blacksmith's forge. He is banking the fire now, shoveling ash over the embers to keep them alive until morning. The smell of hot iron lingers in the air. He nods to you in greeting, his face ruddy from the day's heat, and then closes the heavy wooden door, shutting The cold out near the church, a few villagers linger, speaking in low voices. They are planning the morrow whether it will be safe to travel to the nearby market town, whether the roads will be clear enough to bring back needed goods. In winter, such journeys are not taken lightly. A sudden storm, an unseen patch of ice, or even the setting sun can turn a simple errand into a dangerous ordeal. You reach your own cottage just as the first true darkness settles in. Inside, the fire has been fed and now burns brightly, casting a steady glow across the room. Shadows sway gently along the walls, their movement tied to the flicker of the flames. The evening meal is already being prepared. In the pot over the fire, a thick stew simmers, its scent filling the room. You catch the earthy aroma of root vegetables, the savory richness of meat saved from a recent hunt, and the faint tang of herbs gathered in summer and dried for winter. You sit near the hearth, extending your hands to the warmth. The heat seeps slowly into your skin, easing the stiffness in your fingers. Across the room, a child hums quietly to herself as she helps peel turnips. The soft scrape of the knife against the skin almost hypnotic. The meal is served in wooden bowls, thick slices of bread on the side. Eating together in winter feels different, more deliberate, more grateful. The food is hearty, meant to keep strength in the body against the cold. Between spoonfuls, conversation drifts easily. A story from a neighbor, a reminder of which tools need mending, a quiet laugh at something small and ordinary. When the meal is done, the bowls are rinsed with warm water and set aside. The fire is fed again, the logs settling with soft cracks and pops as the flames rise. Someone pulls out a spindle and begins spinning wool, the fibers twisting and tightening with practiced hands. Another takes up a small carving project, the faint rasp of the knife on wood filling the quiet spaces between voices. Outside, the wind has begun to rise, its low howl threading through the gaps in the shutters. It is not a fierce wind, yet just enough to remind everyone of the cold waiting beyond the door. The sound blends with the occasional creak of the rafters as the wood shifts in the night air. The hours pass without urgency. Time, evenings, stretches differently, slower, more contained. There is no rush, no pressing list of tasks that cannot wait until morning. The world has been reduced to the circle of light around the hearth, and everything beyond that can be left for another day. Eventually, the household begins to ready for sleep. The bedding, thick wool blankets, patched quilts, sometimes furs, laid out close to the fire. The youngest are tucked in first, their heads disappearing beneath the covers. Only the soft rhythm of their breathing left to mark their presence. Before the adults settle, there is one last tending of the fire. The embers are banked, not fully extinguished, so that in the morning a few breaths and a handful of kindling will be enough to bring it back to life. The fire is more than warmth, here it is survival, and so it is treated with the same care. As food or water, you lie down beneath your own blanket, feeling its heavy warmth settle over you. The air in the cottage is cooler now that the fire has been damped, but the closeness of the bedding and the faint, residual heat from the hearth are enough to hold the cold at bay. Your eyes adjust slowly to the dimness. The last light comes. From the faint glow of the embers, a soft orange pulse that makes the room feel smaller, safer. The wind outside continues its song, steady and unbroken, as if reminding you that winter still holds the world in its grasp. In these quiet hours, before sleep takes you, you can feel the deeper rhythm of medieval winter life. It is not a season of idleness, but of measured energy, of choosing what is worth doing and what can be left until the thaw. It is a season of relying on others, of shared meals and shared fires, of knowing that survival is not a solitary act. Beyond the walls of your home, the village sleeps in its own pockets of warmth. Each cottage holds its own small world, different faces, different stories, but the same firelight, the same careful balance between cold and comfort. And so, the night deepens. The wind carries the faint scent of wood smoke through the lanes. The snow glitters faintly under the moonlight, and somewhere, far off, a church bell marks the passing of another hour. The sound is low and steady, a reminder that even in the stillness, time moves forward. You close your eyes, letting the warmth of the blankets and the muffled quiet of the night settle over you. The medieval winter may be harsh, but here, in this moment, you are sheltered within it, one more thread in the long fabric of lives lived against the cold. One more night held safe by the glow of the hearth. The morning light in the village arrives reluctantly, as though it too is reluctant to leave the warmth of its hidden bed behind the clouds. You stand just outside the low wooden door of your dwelling, the cold air sliding across your cheeks like a curious hand. The ground crunches beneath your boots, thin, packed snow mixed with the dusting of frost that settled silently overnight. Each exhale forms a soft cloud before your face, lingering for a moment before disappearing into the crisp air around you. The world is still muted by the hush of winter. Roofs of thatch and turf are topped with a delicate layer of white. The smoke from chimney holes drifts in long, lazy columns, carrying the scent of peat fires and the faint, sweet aroma of dried herbs hanging above kitchen hearths. The village is small, perhaps 24 homes huddled together for warmth and shelter against the wind that sweeps in from the distant hills. Your journey begins slowly, not with a sudden departure, but with a quiet wandering. The main lane of the village is little more than a frozen path, rutted by the wooden wheels of carts and the marks of sledges dragged by hand. You pass by the smithy, its door open just enough to let out a faint orange glow. Inside, the blacksmith's breath clouds in the chill as he lifts a hammer, the clang of metal upon metal ringing out into the still air. The sound is muffled by snow, turned into something softer, less jarring, more like a distant heartbeat than the sharp echo of summer. Work. In these cold months, work slows. Even so, the rhythm of daily life continues, unhurried yet constant. A woman emerges from her home, her woolen shawl pulled tightly about her shoulders. She carries a clay jug toward the well at the village's center, her boots leaving careful prints in the snow. As she walks, the faint jingle of the iron hook on the jug's handle mingles with the distant caw of a crow perched on a bare branch. When you reach the well yourself, you pause. Its wooden frame is capped with frost, the bucket's rope stiff and brittle with cold. You can imagine the icy bite of water freshly drawn, the way it stings your hands before your palms go numb. A young boy is already there, turning the creaking crank with both mittened hands. His breath puffs in short bursts as the bucket rises from the dark circle below. He smiles shyly at you before darting off toward his family's home, the water sloshing gently in his pail. Further along the path, you see the mill at the edge of the frozen stream. In warmer seasons, the wheel turns steadily, powered by the rush of water, but now it stands still, rimmed with ice. The stream itself moves only in secret, beneath a crust of frozen white. You kneel for a moment to touch the surface, feeling how smooth and glassy it is under your fingertips, hearing the faint murmur of hidden currents below. The air here feels even colder, as though the water breathes out its own winter. Your thoughts drift to the fields beyond the village. They lie barren now, the earth hard as stone, the furrows filled with frost. In summer, they are alive with green notes and barley swaying in the breeze, but in this season they seem to sleep, covered in the white quilt of snow. A few withered stalks poke through, reminders of the harvest past. Scarecrows lean in. The fields, their straw shoulders weighed down by frost, their once bright rags faded to dull shades. It is in this stillness that life here feels most delicate. The people of the village must draw on their stores grain kept in wooden bins, root vegetables packed in straw, smoked meats hung high in rafters to keep away from pests. The long months teach patience, and every meal is prepared with care. For waste in winter can mean want before spring. As you continue walking, you spot a small group near the chapel, a simple timber building with a roof of mossy thatch. The door stands ajar, letting out a sliver of warm light. Inside, candles flicker, casting golden halos that dance on the wooden walls. A priest in a thick wool robe bends over a small altar, arranging sprigs of evergreen, the only living green to be found this time of year. These decorations are not only for beauty, they are a promise of life's return. A symbol that even the coldest winter will one day give way to spring. From the chapel, you wander toward the market square. In summer, it is crowded with stalls, the air filled with the shouts of traders and the scents of fresh bread, honey, and roasting meats. Today, it is quieter, though not empty. A few traders stand behind carts laden with winter goods, bundles of firewood, skeins of wool, baskets of onions, and jars of pickled vegetables. You watch as a woman examines a skein, testing its softness between her fingers before handing over a few coins. The trader wraps the wool carefully, as though even something so common should be protected from the bite of the cold. A thin winter sun hangs low in the sky, its pale light sliding along the snow and ice, making the whole village shimmer faintly. Your breath falls into rhythm with your steps, and time seems to stretch. This is not a hurried world. Even the crows circling above seem to move slowly, their wings cutting through the still air with unhurried beats. A narrow track leads away from the market toward the edge of the village, where the forest begins. The trees here stand tall and bare, their branches laced with frost like delicate silver threads. Entering the forest feels like stepping into a different kind of silence, one that presses softly against your ears. Snow lies deep in places, broken only by the delicate tracks of deer or the sharp prints of a fox. Somewhere nearby, a woodpecker taps against bark, the sound sharp but not jarring, more like a steady drumbeat in the background of winter's still song. In the forest's quiet, you find yourself thinking about the people who live here. Resilience, their ability to endure not just one winter, but many. Each season teaches them something: when to harvest, when to store, when to rest. The medieval winter is not just a trial. It is also a teacher, reminding all who live through it of the cycles of nature, the value of preparation, and the importance of community. Eventually, you turn back toward the village. Smoke still drifts from chimneys, carrying with it the scent of meals being prepared, perhaps a thick stew bubbling in a pot over the fire, its steam rich with the aroma of herbs and root vegetables. You imagine the warmth inside each home, the low fire casting a golden glow, children gathered under blankets, the soft clack of knitting needles as someone works to finish a garment before nightfall. The light fades early in winter, and already the shadows are beginning to stretch long across the snow. As you walk back down the main path, you feel the cold deepening, the air sharpening. The village seems to gather itself for the night doors closing, shutters being fastened, animals guided into shelters. Somewhere, a dog barks, its voice carrying in the still air before fading into silence. You step inside your dwelling at last, pushing the wooden door shut behind you. The air inside is warmer, scented with smoke and something simmering over the fire. The walls glow with the soft light of tallow candles, their flames steady in the still air. You shed your cloak and gloves, feeling the gradual return of warmth to your fingers. Outside, village settles under the cover of night, the snow reflecting the faint silver of the moon. Inside, you sit by the hearth, listening to the quiet crackle of the fire and the occasional creak of wood as it shifts in the heat. The day's journey through the winter world lingers in your mind, the slow steps, the crisp air, the way the land sleeps in stillness yet hums quietly with the promise of life to come. The morning in the medieval settlement unfolds slowly, as though the entire village is reluctant to stir from the warmth of its thatched roofs and hearths. The air is crisp and clear, the kind that makes every breath feel as though it has been filtered through the purest ice. A pale sun rises low over the horizon, casting a gentle, muted light that spreads like diluted gold over the frosted ground. You walk along the narrow main road, your footsteps softened by a fine crust of snow. The wooden homes lean close to one another, their timber frames dark against the whitewashed daub, the edges trimmed in frost that sparkles faintly when touched. By sunlight, the stillness is comforting, yet alive, a stillness that hums with the soft activity of people beginning their day. The smell of wood smoke is constant, drifting lazily from squat chimneys, blending with the faint aroma of baking bread from the village bakehouse. A few figures move about in the distance, bundled in woolen cloaks, the colors muted earthy browns, grays, and deep greens. From one doorway, a woman steps out with a wooden bucket in hand, her breath billowing in a cloud before her face as she makes her way toward the communal well. The well's roof is capped with snow, and the rope creaks softly as she lowers the bucket into the darkness, the splash below echoing gently through the frosty air to lyric. The young scribe walks ahead of you, his pace unhurried. In his arms, he carries a bundle of parchment wrapped in a square of linen, its edges tucked in tightly to protect the precious material from the cold. The ink he uses becomes sluggish in winter, thickening like molasses, and so he must keep it wrapped and close to his body until he reaches the scriptorium. His boots, worn but sturdy, press into the snow with a muffled crunch, leaving a trail of neat impressions behind him. You follow him as he turns down a quieter lane where the homes are smaller, the chimneys fewer. Here, the road passes close to the edge of the forest, tall, straight pines and bare-branched oaks that rise like solemn guardians. The occasional snap of a branch or rustle of frost-tipped leaves reminds you that even in the depth of winter, the forest remains a place of life. Somewhere far off, a woodcutter's axe meets the trunk of a tree with a low, thick, rhythmic thud, each strike spaced apart, as though he is pacing himself against the cold. From this side of the village, you can see beyond the palisade wall to the rolling white fields beyond. A few dark specks move slowly across them. Sheep, their thick winter coats dusted with frost. Heads bent toward patches of grass uncovered by yesterday's sun. A shepherd stands nearby, leaning on his long crook. A dog at his side, watchful and still. Alaric pauses for a moment beside a narrow stream that trickles even in this cold season. Thin ice clings to its edges, forming delicate patterns that resemble the veins of leaves. The water itself runs clear and shallow, moving with a soft murmur. He crouches for a moment, brushing a hand over the ice, as though noting its thickness. A habit formed from years of knowing how treacherous winter streams can be. Then he rises again, continuing toward the small stone building where he will spend much of his day. The scriptorium is modest, a single-room structure built of rough-hewn stone, its roof heavy with thatch, darkened by weather. A small window, glazed with oiled parchment rather than glass, lets in a muted light. As Alaric opens the door, a faint warmth meets you, scented with beeswax from the candles that have been burning since early morning. The space is still, save for the gentle scratch of quills upon parchment from the other scribes already at their work. He greets them in a low voice, a simple nod, and the murmur of names. Then he takes his seat at a sturdy wooden table, setting down his bundle. His tools are simple yet treasured. The quill trimmed to a fine point, the small pot of thick ink, the penknife for sharpening, and the sheets of parchment smoothed and weighted at the corners. His fingers, reddened by the cold, curl carefully around the quill as he begins to copy a passage from an older text, a prayer written in careful Latin script. The rhythm of the work is hypnotic. Dip the quill, draw the line, form the curve. Lift and pause. Outside, the wind sighs softly against the stone walls, but within, the quiet is deep, broken only by the occasional shifting of a chair or the faint sound of parchment turning. Each letter is a small act of preservation, each word a bridge to knowledge that will endure beyond the winter, beyond even this generation. From time to time, Alaric glances toward the window, watching the shifting light. The sun will rise only. So far today, before it begins its slow descent, the hours of daylight brief in this season. He knows that by late afternoon, the village will already be preparing for night. Shutters closed, fires stoked, animals brought in from the cold. Winter teaches people to live not by the clock, but by the rise and fall of light itself. When midday arrives, a quiet break is taken. The scribes step outside, wrapping their cloaks tightly. The air feels sharper now, the sky a pale washed out blue. A woman from the bakehouse arrives with a basket of coarse bread and a small pot of broth, steam rising into the cold air. You join them in a simple meal, the bread warm in your hands, the broth rich with the taste of root vegetables and a hint of salted meat. A rare addition in the leaner months. The warmth lingers in your chest as you and Alaric set off for the short walk back toward the main square. The village feels more awake now, though still quiet compared to summer months. A group of children play in the snow near a cart, their laughter muffled by wool scarves wrapped high around their faces. A farmer leads a small donkey down the lane, the creature's breath puffing in soft clouds. A few hens scratch in the snow at the edge of a yard, undeterred by the cold, their feathers fluffed for warmth. As you pass the market shelter, little more than a timber frame with a roof. You see a few stalls set up, though goods are sparse in winter. Dried herbs hang from cords, their scent faint but still noticeable. A woman sells small hand-carved spoons and bowls, each shaped from wood gathered during autumn. Another offers skeins of spun wool, dyed in deep shades of madder, red and woad blue. The colors are a reminder that even in the muted season, there is beauty and life woven into daily existence. The afternoon stretches on in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Shadows lengthen across the snow, and the air begins to take on that particular stillness that signals the approach of evening. Alaric returns to the scriptorium for a final hour of work, his quill scratching steadily across the page. The candles are lit once more, their flame steady in the still air, casting pools of honey-colored light over the tables. When at last he sets down his tools for the day, there is a quiet satisfaction in his posture. Another page completed, another thread in the tapestry of knowledge secured. Together, you step out into the deepening dusk. The sky is painted in soft hues of rose and pale violet, the first stars beginning to emerge. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls, not loud, but resonant enough to carry across the cold air, calling people to the safety and warmth of home. The journey back through the village is even quieter than before. Doors are closing now, faint light spilling for a moment into the snow before vanishing as the shutters are drawn. The smoke from the chimneys thickens, and the scent of supper cooking stewed cabbage, barley, perhaps a bit of preserved meat, drifts from unseen kitchens. You follow Alaric past the well, past the silent market shelter, and back toward the modest cluster of homes near the scriptorium. It feels as though the entire world is tucking itself in for the night. The forest beyond the palisade stands in dark silhouette against the fading sky, the pines unmoving, the oaks skeletal in their winter slumber. The snow crunches softly beneath your feet, a sound that will stay with you, as constant as the smell of wood smoke and the hush of the wind by the time you part ways with Alaric. The stars are scattered in their quiet brilliance above, and the moon is rising, pale, serene, and watchful. The village sleeps, but life continues in its slow, steady heartbeat. Each day a quiet chapter in the long history of surviving a medieval winter. The narrow track you follow leads out from the bustle of the market and into a softer, quieter part of the medieval settlement. Here, the houses are smaller. Their thatched roofs bowed gently under the weight of winter frost, and their walls of wattle and daub mottled with the earthy colors of age. Smoke drifts lazily from squat chimneys, the scent of peat fires mingling with the cold, damp air. You can hear the muffled bleating of sheep somewhere in the distance, and the occasional creak of a wooden door as someone steps outside to fetch water or check on a coop of hens. Alaric, walking just a pace ahead, slows his steps so you can take in the surroundings at your own leisure. He speaks little, his voice soft when he does, a habit perhaps learned from hours spent in the monastery scriptorium, where quiet is a rule as sacred as the ink-stained pages themselves. He points out a small shrine nestled against the trunk of an old oak. The wood of the shrine is weathered, its simple carving of a cross softened by time. Yet someone has taken the trouble to place a sprig of evergreen within it. In the stillness of this moment, it is easy to imagine that such small acts of devotion are the heartbeat of the village. Quiet, unspoken, and enduring. The path slopes gently downward, leading to a stream that cuts through the frost-laced meadow. The water runs slow and dark, reflecting the pale winter sky in rippling fragments. On its banks, the grass is brittle, its tips catching the faint sunlight like thin glass. A pair of ducks float downstream, their muted quacks the only interruption in the hush. You pause to listen, letting the sound of the current become a kind of lull. Its gentle rush as calming as the pages of history turning in a quiet library. Alaric leads you to a narrow wooden footbridge, its planks worn smooth from years of passage. As you step across, the wood shifts ever so slightly beneath your feet, the way old things do, not from weakness, but from a memory of every step they have borne. On the other side, the air seems subtly different, touched by the scent of pine and damp moss. The forest here rises in a gentle slope, the trunks of tall evergreens standing like pillars in a vast, open hall. The ground is softened by a quilt of fallen needles, muffling your footsteps to a near silence. Inside this forest, the light filters in slanted beams, each one hazy with fine mist. A crow calls somewhere overhead, the sound deep and resonant, echoing from unseen branches. Alaric stops beside a fallen log and rests his bundle of scrolls against it for a moment. He tells you of how, in winters past, villagers would come here to gather pine resin for sealing cracks in their walls or mending fishing nets. It is a task done slowly, with patience, and perhaps that is why it lingers in his voice like a story past. Down from his father, you continue deeper into the forest until you reach a small clearing. Here, the ground is sprinkled with frost-kissed leaves, and the center holds a rough-hewn wooden bench, perhaps once a resting place for woodcutters or shepherds. Alaric sits for a moment, looking out toward the far end of the clearing where the forest opens slightly to reveal a distant view of the river. He gestures for you to join him, and together you sit in the quiet, listening to the faint murmur of water and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot as a deer moves somewhere unseen. From here, the journey turns gently back toward the village, but rather than taking the same path, Alaric chooses a winding route along the forest's edge. The trees here thin out, revealing small plots of farmland lying dormant under winter's touch. Furrows run in patient lines across the earth, waiting for the thaw that will bring life back to the soil. Wooden fences, some leaning and patched, mark the boundaries between families' lands. You can almost picture the spring to come, the careful sowing of seed, the rhythmic swing of scythes, and the soft hum of voices carrying across the fields. Passing one such fence, Alaric pauses to adjust a loose rail, his hands working with quiet familiarity. He tells you that in times of deep snow, these fences can vanish under drifts, and neighbors sometimes walk across one another's land without realizing it, their footprints winding between the trees and houses. In such moments, the boundaries of the village blur, both literally and in spirit, as survival becomes a shared endeavor. By the time you return to the main road, the afternoon light has shifted to a warm, golden hue. spilling over the rooftops and painting the snow in soft amber. Smoke curls upward from more chimneys now, carrying with it the scent of stewing root vegetables and the faint temps of cured meat. The sound of distant laughter drifts from somewhere down the lane. Gentle and unhurried, Alaric walks with you past the smithy, where the forge has been banked for the evening. The door stands open, letting out the smell of charred wood and hot metal. Tools hang neatly along the walls, their edges gleaming in the fading light. Further along, a baker's window offers a glimpse of round loaves cooling on wooden boards, their crusts crackling softly as they release the heat of the day. The sun slips lower, and lanterns begin to glow at doorways, their light spilling in soft pools across the snow-dusted street. You and Alaric slow your steps even more now, as though both of you are reluctant to leave this lingering calm. Somewhere behind you, a bell tolls, not urgently, but in a steady, measured rhythm, marking the passage of time in a place where life flows at its own pace. As you near the monastery walls, Alaric glances back toward the darkening sky. A scattering of stars has begun to appear, faint pinpricks of silver in the deepening blue. He tells you that winter nights here are some of the clearest of the year, the cold air sharpening the light of the constellations until they seem almost close enough to touch. His voice lowers to a near whisper as he describes the names of the stars and the stories woven into them. Tales of travelers, kings and saints who, like him, once looked upward on nights just like this. You step through the monastery gate, the sound of the wooden latch closing softly behind you. Inside the walls, the air is still and touched with the faint smell of beeswax from the candles burning in narrow windows. Somewhere in the cloisters, footsteps echo gently, and the low hum of a chant drifts from the chapel. The world beyond these walls fades into a gentle hush, as though it exists now only as a memory carried in the folds of the night. And here, in this pause between day and darkness, you feel the quiet embrace of a life shaped by seasons, ritual, and the steady presence of history, a life that moves slowly enough to notice the frost on a fence post, the warmth of a small hearth fire, and the unbroken song of a river as it winds its way through the winter countryside. The afternoon light begins to soften, spilling its gold across the snowy rooftops and frozen fields. The air carries that gentle hush that comes when the day starts to wind down, when most people are making their final preparations before nightfall. You find yourself walking with Alaric along a winding lane that leads away from the busier market and toward the edges of the settlement, where the forest begins again, thick and shadowed. The snow here is less trampled, and each step leaves a crisp print behind, the edges sharp in the cold. A few hardy birds hop between the bare branches, their tiny feet barely bending the frost-coated twigs. In the distance, you can hear the rhythmic thud of an axe, someone splitting wood for the long night ahead. The sound is steady and unhurried, as if each swing is a part of a ritual that has been repeated for generations. Alaric tells you softly about the people who live on the outskirts, families of woodcutters and trappers who rely on the forest for their livelihood. Their homes are built lower to the ground, roofs thatched thick with straw or covered in heavy sod to keep out the cold winds. Smoke drifts lazily from the chimneys, mingling with the scent of pine and the faint tank of burning resin. The sky above is streaked with the last pale blue of day, deepening to a lavender gray that hints at the first stars. You pass one such home, its small window glowing warmly from within. For a brief moment, you catch a glimpse of life inside a woman stirring a pot over the hearth, her sleeves rolled up to the elbow, steam curling upward. A child sits on a low stool near her, carving a small wooden figure with intense concentration. The simple scene is timeless, unchanging, a reminder that warmth and comfort are not measured in grandeur, but in the quiet rituals of living. As the light continues to fade, Alaric leads you toward a small footbridge that crosses a narrow, ice-edged stream. The water moves slowly here, slipping beneath a crust of ice where it can, whispering softly against the frozen banks. The bridge creaks gently under your combined weight, and you pause for a moment in the middle, leaning against the smooth wooden rail to look down at the water's slow, patient flow. Tiny shards of ice catch the fading light like scattered glass, drifting gently along. On the far side of the bridge, the road becomes narrower still, almost more of a trail leading between towering pines. Their needles, dusted with frost, give off a clean, resinous fragrance that fills the air. Somewhere far off, you hear the faint call of an owl, early to begin its evening hunt. Alaric walks with a measured pace, his voice low and even, as if he too is mindful of the forest's steep, unbroken quiet. He tells you that in winters past, this very path would have been used by travelers moving between villages, carrying goods or messages, often in conditions far harsher than today's. In deep snow, the journey could take hours longer, the cold biting through wool and fur until each breath felt like inhaling shards of ice. Yet the path remained open, trodden by many feet over the years, a thin but vital thread connecting one small community to another. After some time, the trail opens into a clearing where the snow lies deeper, untouched except for the faint traces of deer. The stillness here is profound, so much so that you can hear the gentle flutter of a bird's wings as it moves from branch to branch high above. Alaric stops, drawing in a slow breath, as if he too wishes to linger in this suspended moment between day and night. He gestures to the far side of the clearing, where a small shrine stands half hidden beneath the snow-laden boughs of an ancient oak. The wood of the shrine is dark and weathered, its carvings softened by time, but still visible, a tangle of interwoven patterns that seem almost to shift in the low light. Someone has placed a bundle of evergreen boughs at its base, along with a small clay lamp, its flame flickering weakly against the encroaching darkness. This, Alaric murmurs, is for safe passage through the winter. He speaks of how, long before the current village stood here, travelers and woodcutters would stop to offer a prayer at this spot, asking the spirits of the forest to guide them and keep them warm. Even now, in a time when faith has many forms, people still pause here, still leave a sprig of pine or a whispered wish. The tradition remains as much a part of survival as the firewood stacked by each door. You stand beside the shrine for a moment, the air utterly still except for the faint hiss of the lamp's flame. The light from it dances faintly over the snow, throwing small shadows that seem to sway and bend as though moved by unseen hands. Above you, the first true stars emerge, bright and cold against the indigo sky. Alaric eventually turns back toward the trail, his breath clouding in the air. The return walk is quieter still, as if the forest has settled fully into night. By the time you cross the little bridge again, the windows of the woodcutters' cottages glow more brightly against the dark. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then falls silent. The village itself is hushed now, its sounds muted by the snow and the falling night. When you re-enter the main lane, you notice that the market stalls have all been packed away, leaving only the faint traces of footprints and the scattered marks of wagon wheels in the frozen earth. The square feels broader, emptier without the noise of trade, and the sound of your own steps seems to linger in the still air. Alaric walks with you toward the scriptorium once more, the wooden building standing at the edge of the square like a quiet sentinel. Inside, the warmth envelops you immediately, the scent of ink and parchment mingled with a faint sweetness of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. A single candle burns on the desk, its light pooling gently over an open page filled with careful, looping script. He sets down his bundle of parchment, then turns to pour you each a cup of warm spiced ale from a small clay jug. The steam curls upward, carrying the scent of cinnamon and cloves. Outside, the wind begins to pick up, brushing softly against the shutters. But here within these walls, the world feels contained, safe, and far removed from the cold that grips the night. You sit together in companionable silence, sipping the warm drink, listening to the faint crackle of the hearth. The candlelight flickers, casting shifting shapes against the shelves of scrolls and manuscripts. Alaric's gaze drifts to the window for a moment as if watching the snow beyond, then returns to the page before him. "Tomorrow," he says softly, "the work continues." Winter may be long, but each day brings its own small story, and as you listen, the quiet of the medieval evening seems to settle more deeply into your bones, a quiet made of snow, of firelight, and of the gentle persistence of life in even the coldest of seasons. The evening has deepened, and the village seems to draw in upon itself, as though each cottage and barn folds its warmth closer to the hearth. You find yourself walking a quieter path now, away from the bustle of the market and the clang of the blacksmith's forge. Alaric walks beside you, his steps unhurried, his hands tucked into the folds of his woolen cloak. The sky above is brushed in dusky indigo, with the first stars pricking through the thin veil of cloud. Somewhere ahead, you hear the low, slow creak of a wooden cart being drawn toward the last of the storage sheds. The wheels roll reluctantly over the frozen ruts, the sound carrying far in the crisp air. A man leads the cart, his breath clouding before him, his figure bent slightly forward from years of this same work. The faint jingle of a harness bell marks each step of the sturdy mule that pulls the weight. The path winds toward the edge of the village, where fields lie dormant under snow. Here, the earth sleeps, its furrows softened and hidden. The wind is different, less interrupted by buildings, and it brushes your cheek with a sharper, more insistent chill. Alaric pauses for a moment, looking out over the darkened expanse, and says softly that in the spring, these fields will turn a tender green, dotted with shoots of barley and rye. Now, though they are still, and the memory of growth is kept only in the minds of those who till them, you continue onward, your boots making a steady rhythm against the path. The air smells faintly of wood smoke, drifting from a cottage somewhere unseen. There is comfort in that scent, the promise of warmth, of food, of human presence in the cold. You and Alaric come to a low stone wall, its top dusted with frost, and beyond it lies a small cluster of beehives. They are wrapped in woven straw covers to guard against the winter air. He tells you the bees sleep through these months, feeding on what they stored from the summer flowers. Their tiny world folded inward until the thaw comes. Past the hives, the path curves toward the frozen river. The moon, pale and almost full, hangs low enough to cast a dim reflection upon the ice. Here, the world feels larger, the river stretching on into the dark, the far bank lined with shadowed trees. Somewhere beneath the ice, water still moves, slow but steady, carrying with it the memory of warmer days. You hear the faintest groan of shifting ice, like the earth itself releasing a long-held breath. Alaric walks out onto the wooden footbridge, the boards underfoot dry but cold. He rests his hands on the railing, looking upstream. He speaks of the river's importance, how in the warmer months it carries small boats laden with fish, timber, and sacks of grain. Now, in winter, it serves more as a boundary, a quiet marker between the village and the forested lands beyond. You stand together in the stillness, the only sound, the faint ruffle of the wind and the creak of the bridge settling under its own weight, as you turn back toward the village. The first true night has settled in. Lanterns glow from within the windows of cottages, their light flickering with the movement of the flames inside. Some doors are barred now, others still open briefly to let someone in from the cold. The snow underfoot catches glints of that lamplight, as though small stars have fallen and become scattered across the grounda woman passes by carrying a basket covered with a thick cloth. She nods to you and Alaric without speaking, her steps purposeful, her face ruddy from the wind. Alaric explains she is likely bringing bread to a neighbor, for in winter food is shared more freely, not because it is abundant, But because there is strength in ensuring no one goes without, you arrive at the scribe's small workshop. The door set slightly ajar to let out the faint aroma of drying ink and warmed beeswax. Inside, the air is instantly more forgiving. A single candle burns on the work table, casting a gentle circle of light over parchment sheets. The tools of his craft, quills, ink pots, a small knife for sharpening, are neatly arranged. As though each knows its proper place, Alaric removes his cloak and sets it over the back of a chair, inviting you to sit. From a shelf, he takes down a wooden box and opens it to reveal a small hoard of winter comforts: dried apples, pinch of honey, a small flask of warmed, spiced ale. He pours some into a cup, the steam curling upward in soft tendrils, filling the air with a faint scent of cinnamon and cloves. The warmth seeps into your hands as you hold the cup, and with each slow sip, it feels as though the cold of the river path is being gently undone. He returns to his work, mending a torn binding on a well-used book. The quiet between you is companionable, filled with the soft scratch of quill against parchment and the occasional creak of the chair when you shift. Outside, the wind moves around the walls in slow gusts, like an old friend circling the house before settling to rest. Time passes without urgency. The candle burns lower, its pool of wax spreading slightly at the base. You feel your body growing heavier in the chair, the warmth of the drink and the steady rhythm of the room lulling you toward a quieter state of mind. Eventually, Alaric sets aside his work and says it is time to close the shutters for the night. You follow him to the window, and together you look out one last time. The village is almost entirely still now. The only movement, the faint drift of snow across the path and the slow fading of light in the sky. He closes the shutters gently, and the outside world becomes only a memory until morning. The two of you share a few last words in the soft glow of the candle. And then he bids you rest. You step back into the night air for the short walk to your own lodging, the air crisp but not unkind. Above, the stars seem brighter now, the moon casting silver shadows that follow you along the path. The scent of wood smoke, the memory of warm ale, and the echo of the river's quiet voice accompany you until you reach the door. Inside, the room greets you with stillness and the faint scent of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. You remove your cloak, your boots, and sit for a moment by the small hearth, letting the last of the chill leave your fingers. In the quiet, you think of the day's small moments: the frost on the rooftops, the bees sleeping in their straw hives, the ice shifting beneath the bridge, each one a thread in the tapestry of this winter village. Life as you finally settle into bed. The wool blankets pulled snug around your shoulders. You feel not just the warmth of the room, but the quiet presence of the world outside, the village sleeping, the river flowing unseen, and the stars keeping watch over it all. The day is beginning to slip toward evening, and the light shifts from a bright, wintry silver to something softer and more golden, as though the sun itself has decided to pull a blanket over its shoulders. You walk with slow, steady steps, leaving behind the bustling heart of the village. The air has a stillness now, interrupted only by the gentle crunch of your boots against frost-hardened earth. The road you follow bends gently between low stone walls, their tops traced with ice like delicate embroidery. Every so often, a sparrow darts from one wall to another, sending tiny cascades of snowflakes tumbling into the grass below. In the distance, you can hear the faint trickle of water, a stream winding lazily through the fields, its surface a shifting patchwork of ice and open water. Alaric walks beside you, his bundle of scrolls tucked safely under one arm. He speaks softly, his voice carrying that slow, deliberate cadence of someone who is used to reciting words in the stillness of a library. "This path," he says, nodding ahead, "will take us past the old orchard. It isn't much now, bare branches and frost, but in summer, the air is so thick with the scent of apples you can almost taste it before you bite." The thought seems to warm the air between you. Though all around, winter keeps its quiet hold. The orchard appears a few minutes later, the trees black against the fading sky. Their branches stretch like frozen rivers, each one tipped with a droplet of ice that catches the last threads of daylight. You slow your steps without thinking, letting your fingertips brush the rough bark of a nearby tree. It feels solid and grounding, a reminder that even in this cold, life is simply waiting for the right season to stir again. Beyond the orchard, the path opens into a gently sloping field. Here, the grass is matted under a thin crust of snow, and the wind moves unhindered, carrying with it the faint scent of wood smoke from the village behind. The smoke mixes with the sharper, cleaner edge of winter air, that scent of snow that has yet to fall. Somewhere far off, a dog barks, its voice softened by distance until it becomes part of the landscape's quiet music. Alaric glances toward the horizon, where the pale disk of the moon is already visible against a sky still brushed with daylight. "It will be full soon," he murmurs. On nights like that, the river looks as if it's made of silver. You follow his gaze, and the mention of the river draws you onward. The path narrows as you move toward the sound of running water. You pass under a wooden arch, weathered by years and draped in thin strands of ivy that somehow cling to life through the cold. Beyond it, the river reveals itself, slow in some places, rushing in others, its surface rippling with light. On the far bank, tall reeds bow slightly, heavy with frost that glitters in the low sun. The two of you pause at the edge, where flat stones jut into the water like steps. Alaric kneels, resting his scrolls beside him, and dips his fingers into the current. "Colder than last week," he notes, and you crouch to do the same, feeling the icy bite that seeps instantly into your skin. The cold is startling, but it leaves you more awake, more present. You watch the small swirls that form around the stones, each one catching the fading light before dissolving downstream. A small wooden bridge spans the river a little way upstream. Its planks are dusted with snow, and the sound of water flowing beneath it creates a steady, hypnotic rhythm. The two of you cross slowly, your boots creaking on the wood. At the center, you pause again, leaning over the railing to watch a single leaf caught in the current below. It spins lazily in a small eddy before finally slipping free and continuing its journey, a reminder that everything, in its own time, moves forward. Beyond the bridge, the landscape begins to change. The fields give way to a cluster of low hills, their slopes dotted with small stone huts and the dark shapes of sheep grazing on whatever grass they can find. Smoke rises from a chimney in one of the huts, curling upward in soft, gray ribbons. The scent of burning peat drifts toward you, earthy and rich. As if the land itself is offering warmth, Alaric tells you this is the outer edge of the village territory. Few people live out here through the winter, but those who do are shepherds, keeping watch over their flocks. In spring, he says, the hills will be alive with color, yellow, gorse, and purple heather, but for now, they are wrapped in the quiet dignity of the cold season. The shepherds you pass greet you with a nod or a lift of the hand, their gestures unhurried. One stands with a crook in hand, a woolen scarf wrapped high around his face. A sheepdog at his side perks its ears at your approach, but stays where it is, eyes bright and attentive. You walk on, letting the scene settle in your mind like an old painting. The muted tones, the patient animals, the curl of smoke against a pale sky. Eventually, the hills open into a small plateau, and from here, you can see far beyond the village across a stretch of forest, over the winding silver ribbon of the river, and toward the hazy outline of distant mountains. The sun is lower now, painting the sky in bands of gold, rose, and deepening blue. The sight holds you still for a long moment, as though time has slowed to match the pace of the land. Alaric speaks again, almost in a whisper. On nights like this, he says, my mentor used to tell me stories of the first settlers here, how they came from across the mountains, carrying seeds and tools, and built their homes near the river for its life-giving water. They say the same river has never stopped flowing, not even in the harshest winters. The story settles over you like a blanket, warm despite the cold air. You imagine those first settlers, their faces wind-burned but determined, building fires against the dark. It feels as if the land remembers them in the curve of the hills, in the paths that still follow their roots, in the quiet that speaks of survival. As the last of the sun dips below the horizon, you and Alaric turn back toward the village. The path now feels different, wrapped in the deepening blue of twilight. A single star appears overhead, sharp and steady, followed by another, and then another, until the sky is scattered with light. The moon's pale glow spills across the frost-covered ground, making each step shimmer faintly by the time you pass the orchard again. The branches have grown dark against the moonlit sky. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings, slow, measured tones that mark the passing of another day. The sound lingers in the air long after it stops, as though the village itself is pausing to breathe. When you finally step back into the warm glow of torchlight near the central square, the smells of cooking fires and freshly baked bread drift toward you. Alaric nods, saying simply, "We've timed it well." The night is just beginning, and as the two of you enter the heart of the village once more, the gentle transition from open landscape to quiet hearth feels like the closing of a well-loved book, one you know you will return to again and again. Beyond the bridge, the landscape begins to change. The fields give way to a cluster of low hills, their slopes dotted with small stone huts and the dark shapes of sheep grazing on whatever grass they can find. Smoke rises from a chimney in one of the huts, curling upward in soft gray ribbons. The scent of burning peat drifts toward you, earthy and rich, as if the land itself is offering warmth. Alaric tells you this is the outer edge of the village territory. Few people live out here through the winter, but those who do are shepherds, keeping watch over their flocks. In spring, he says, the hills will be alive with color, yellow gorse and purple heather, but for now, they are wrapped in the quiet dignity of the cold season. The shepherds you pass greet you with a nod or a lift of the hand, their gestures unhurried. One stands with a crook in hand, a woolen scarf wrapped high around his face. A sheepdog at his side perks its ears at your approach, but stays where it is, eyes bright and attentive. You walk on, letting the scene settle in your mind like an old painting. The muted tones, the patient animals, the curl of smoke against a pale sky. Eventually, the hills open into a small plateau, and from here, you can see far beyond the village across a stretch of forest, over the winding silver ribbon of the river, and toward the hazy outline of distant mountains. The sun is lower now, painting the sky in bands of gold, rose, and deepening blue. The sight holds you still for a long moment, as though time has slowed to match the pace of the land. Alaric speaks again, almost in a whisper. On nights like this, he says, my mentor used to tell me stories of the first settlers here, how they came from across the mountains, carrying seeds and tools, and built their homes near the river for its life-giving water. They say the same river has never stopped flowing, not even in the harshest winters. The story settles over you like a blanket, warm despite the cold air. You imagine those first settlers, their faces wind-burned but determined, building fires against the dark. It feels as if the land remembers them in the curve of the hills, in the paths that still follow their roots, in the quiet that speaks of survival as the last of the sun dips below the horizon. You and Alaric turn back toward the village. The path now feels different, wrapped in the deepening blue of twilight. A single star appears overhead, sharp and steady, followed by another and then another, until the sky is scattered with light. The moon's pale glow spills across the frost-covered ground, making each step shimmer faintly by the time you pass the orchard again. The branches have grown dark against the moonlit sky. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings slow, measured tones that mark the passing of another day. The sound lingers in the air long after it stops, as though the village itself is pausing to breathe. When you finally step back into the warm glow of torchlight near the central square, the smells of cooking fires and freshly baked bread drift toward you. Alaric nods, saying simply, "We've timed it well." The night is just beginning, and as the two of you enter the heart of the village once more, the gentle transition from open landscape to quiet hearth feels like the closing of a well-loved book, one you know you will return to again and again. The road beyond the old bridge curves gently, leading you toward a quieter quarter of the medieval town. The bustle of the central square has faded into a background murmur, replaced by the more intimate sounds of life lived at the edges. The creak of a wooden gate as a shepherd guides his small flock through. The clinking of iron as a blacksmith in a side street shapes a slender rod, and the faint, lilting hum of a woman weaving in the doorway of her home. The air is cooler here, touched by the breath of the river that runs just beyond the last row of houses. Its surface moves like a long ribbon of pewter under the pale winter sun, reflecting the sky in shifting fragments. You notice how the light softens everything, the moss along the stones, the worn grain of the shutters. Even the deep lines on the faces of the townsfolk who pass with polite nods and measured steps. Alaric walks beside you, his pace unhurried, as though he knows there is no need to rush this part of the journey. In his hands, he carries nothing now. The scrolls from earlier have been safely delivered, and without their weight, shoulders seem freer. He gestures toward a narrow lane that slopes gently downward, lined with cottages whose chimneys send up thin spirals of smoke. The scent is comforting, a mixture of pine wood and the faint tang of peat. The sort of smell that settles deep into the memory, carrying with it the promise of warmth and a hearth fire to light at the lane's end. The houses give way to open ground where the riverbank stretches wide. Here, the grass lies flat beneath a delicate lace of frost, crunching softly underfoot. You pause for a moment, taking in the scene: a fisherman kneeling to mend his net, his fingers deft despite the chill. A cluster of children skipping stones across the shallows, their laughter spilling into the crisp air. An old woman seated on an overturned barrel, her hands busy shelling a basket of river mussels. Every movement seems unhurried, as if time itself flows more slowly in this part of the town. Alaric leads you to the river's edge, where a weathered wooden pier juts out a short distance into the water. The boards beneath your feet creak in a gentle, almost rhythmic way as the current laps softly against the posts. He explains in his quiet voice that in warmer months, small barges carry goods from here downstream to the larger port cities: sacks of grain, barrels of ale, sometimes even bundles of fine wool. But in winter, the traffic lessens. The river becomes more of a mirror. It's a place for reflection rather than commerce. You lean against the pier's railing, watching the play of light on the water's surface. The ripples catch the sun in scattered points, like molten metal cooling slowly. Somewhere downstream, a pair of swans drift lazily, their white feathers a striking contrast against the muted tones of the landscape. Alaric stands beside you, his gaze following the current. There is a pause, a shared silence that feels like the perfect bridge between the morning's liveliness and the quiet that is settling in now. After some time, you both turn back toward the town. But instead of retracing your steps, Alaric leads you along a path that skirts the river. The ground here is uneven, dotted with the roots of willow trees whose bare branches hang low over the water, each tipped with a tiny droplet of thawing frost. Every so often, you catch glimpses of cottages on the opposite bank, their shapes softened by the haze of wood smoke. The path leads to a small stone archway, not part of the main town walls, but an older, humbler structure worn by centuries of weather. Passing through it feels like stepping into another pocket of time. Beyond the arch lies a cluster of ancient gardens, their beds lying dormant under a blanket of frost. In one corner stands a low greenhouse, its glass panes clouded, inside which you can just make out the faint shapes of winter herbs, rosemary, sage, and thyme. Carefully tended even in the coldest months, an elderly gardener greets you with a nod. His voice little more than a murmur as he tells Alaric about the year's yield. You linger here for a while, breathing in the faint green fragrance that escapes from the open greenhouse door. The smell mingles with the cool air, creating a quiet harmony that seems to seep into your bones. From here, the path bends again, taking you toward a gentle rise in the ground. As you climb it, the rooftops of the town unfold before you, each chimney sending its own thin thread of smoke into the pale sky. The view is serene, the slow curl of the river, the patchwork of fields beyond, and the distant outline of low hills, their tops brushed with snow. Alaric points to a narrow track that winds toward those hills, explaining that it leads to a small monastery known for its illuminated manuscripts. His voice carries a note of fondness, as though the thought of such a place, its quiet scriptorium, its candlelit halls, brings him a particular peace. You don't walk there now, but the idea of it lingers in your mind like the memory of a dream you might visit later. Instead, you both find a bench carved from a single slab of stone set beneath the bare branches of a great oak. From here, you can hear the muffled toll of a distant bell, its sound rolling slowly across the valley. The air is still, and in that stillness, even the smallest details become vivid. The soft whisper of a sparrow's wings as it darts from branch to branch, the brittle snap of frost under your boots when you shift your feet, the faint trickle of water from a nearby spring. Each sound arrives separately, yet together they weave a calm tapestry that settles the mind. After some time, Alaric suggests returning by way of the old mill. The path toward it runs parallel to the river once more, but here the banks are steeper and the water runs faster. You hear it before you see it, the steady rush of the current turning the great wooden wheel. The mill itself is sturdy, built of thick timber, darkened by years of weather, its thatched roof patched in places with fresh straw. Inside, the air smells of grain and wood, and you can hear the soft, steady grind of the millstones. The miller, a stout man with a kind smile, offers you both a small loaf of still warm bread, its crust dusted with flour. You leave the mill with the bread wrapped in a cloth, the warmth of it seeping into your hands. By now, the light has shifted again, softer, more golden, casting long shadows across the ground. The afternoon is moving gently toward evening, and the town's rhythm is slowing further. Smoke rises thicker from the chimneys, and the sound of doors closing carries faintly through the air. Alaric walks with you back toward the main streets, his steps unhurried, as though there is still time for one more detour before nightfall. You follow him through a narrow alley lined with tall, leaning buildings whose upper floors nearly touch, creating a tunnel of shadow and echo. The smell of stew drifts from an open window, mingled with the faint sweetness of baked apples. Somewhere above, you hear the soft thud of someone beating a rug, the dust swirling briefly in the last light of day. When you emerge from the alley, you find yourselves back in a small market square, quieter than the morning, yet still alive in a gentle way. A few vendors pack away their goods, their tables draped with simple cloths. A musician plays a slow, lilting tune on a wooden flute, his notes winding upward into the cooling air. You pause for a moment, letting the melody become part of the fading day, another layer in the long, unbroken rhythm of this place, and as you stand there, the journey of the afternoon feels complete, a seamless drift from one quiet corner of the town to another, the gentle transitions carrying you deeper into its life, its stillness, and its enduring calm. The soft hush of evening has now fully settled across the winter landscape, wrapping the medieval settlement in a stillness that feels almost sacred. The day's work has ended, yet the traces of it remain, the faint smell of fresh wood chips from the carpenter's bench, the lingering warmth of smoke that drifts lazily from a few hearth chimneys, the muted echoes of earlier chatter now replaced by the occasional call of an owl in the distance. You walk slowly along the narrow main lane, the sound of your boots muffled by a light scattering of snow that crunches underfoot with a faint, crisp rhythm. On either side, timber-framed houses lean slightly toward one another, their overhanging eaves forming a sort of shelter above the walkway. By day, these structures seem sturdy and practical. By night, they take on a quiet beauty, their beams casting angular shadows in the pale light of the moon. Tiny glass panes in the windows catch and scatter the flicker of interior candlelight, sending out fractured glimmers like small stars caught in wood and stone. Alaric, your soft-spoken companion, walks just ahead. His steps are unhurried, his fur-lined cloak swaying gently at his sides. He turns to glance back occasionally, as though ensuring you remain close, but says nothing for now. There is a natural agreement between you that the silence of this moment is not to be broken unnecessarily. In the cold air, even the smallest sound carries far, and each breath you take emerges in a visible cloud that lingers before fading into the darkness from the village's modest square. You pass into a quieter quarter where the homes are spaced farther apart, each with its own small garden or yard now lying dormant beneath frost. A faint scent of drying herbs drifts from one open shutter, the bundles hung in the rafters swaying gently with the draft. Somewhere nearby, the low bleat of a goat breaks the stillness, followed by the clink of a wooden latch as someone tends to their animals for the night. These are the final tasks before the cold takes full hold of the land until dawn. The lane bends and opens onto a slightly wider path that leads toward the old watchtower on the village's northern edge. From here, you can see the snow-limped outlines of the palisade wall, not a grand fortress, but a sturdy wooden barrier built long ago to deter wandering wolves or the rare band of raiders. Tonight, it seems more a boundary between the warm glow of the village and the vast, dark quiet of the winter countryside beyond. Alaric gestures toward the tower, his voice low and even, as though speaking too loudly might disturb the night. It's older than the village itself. They say it was first raised when my grandfather's grandfather was a boy. In the spring, the wood smells of resin, but in winter, it creaks like an old man's bones. The path to the tower is lit here and there by tall iron braziers, each cradling a small fire that burns with a steady orange glow. The light they cast is warm, but it reaches only so far before it fades into shadows. When you pass one, you feel the momentary caress of heat against your cheeks before the chill reclaims you. The flames dance in the gentle breeze, their movement mirrored by the faint shimmer of frost on the ground. As you draw closer to the tower, the murmur of low voices greets you, to watchmen speaking softly near the entrance. Their words are too quiet to make out, but their tone is calm, unhurried, almost meditative in its familiarity. They nod politely as you and Alaric approach, the lamplight revealing the frost crusted on the edges of their woolen gloves and the soft vapor rising from their breaths. Inside the watchtower, the air is warmer, though it smells strongly of smoke and tallow. The wooden floor creaks beneath your boots as you begin the slow climb up the narrow spiral steps. Each step is worn in the center from years of use, and as you run your hand along the railing, you feel the faintly polished texture of wood smoothed by countless hands before yours. At the top, a small platform opens to the night sky. Here, the view is sweeping and almost otherworldly. The moon casts its pale light over rolling fields and forest edges, each surface glistening faintly beneath a skin of frost. In the far distance, the faint ribbon of a frozen river catches the moonlight like a silver thread. The only movement comes from the occasional shifting of tree branches in the wind, their shadows swaying gently across the snow. For a long while, You and Alaric stand in silence, simply breathing in the cold, clean air. From up here, the village below looks like a scattering of warm embers in a sea of blue-white darkness. It is a reminder of how small and yet how precious a human settlement can seem in the face of winter's vast reach. Alaric finally speaks, his words slow and thoughtful. In times like these, the land teaches patience. You cannot hurry winter, nor bargain with it. You can only endure and learn its rhythm. His voice blends with the faint hiss of the wind curling around the tower, the two sounds mingling until they feel almost like part of the same element. When you descend and step back outside, the air feels sharper, but your senses are calmer, anchored by the stillness of what you have seen. The walk back toward the village takes you along a side path that skirts the edge of the forest. Here, the snow is untouched except for the delicate prints of small animals, a rabbit perhaps, or a fox. The trees stand tall and dark against the moonlight, their branches etched with frost, so fine it seems almost like spun glass. Occasionally, a clump of snow slips from a bough and lands softly on the ground, the sound muffled as though the earth itself were wrapped in thick cloth by the time you return to the heart of the village. Most windows have gone dark, though a few still flicker faintly with lamplight. Somewhere nearby, a door closes with a muted thud, followed by the faint click of a latch. The settlement seems to be holding its breath, resting in the quiet protection of night. Alaric turns toward his small home. But before parting, he offers you a final, simple nod, an unspoken invitation to carry this moment of stillness with you into the rest of the journey. And as you make your way toward your own place of rest, the soft crunch of snow beneath your feet feels like the only sound in the world, steady and comforting, as the medieval winter night closes gently around you. The light of day has softened into the cool amber of late afternoon, the sort of hour when the medieval world seems to hold its breath between the hum of daily tasks and the stillness of night. You and Alaric have followed the winding path away from the bustle of the riverside, leaving behind the gentle lapping of oars against water and the distant laughter of children skipping stones. The road is narrower here, edged with wild grasses that bow under the weight of frost, their tips glinting faintly in the waning light. The air smells faintly of wood smoke and drying herbs, rosemary, sage, and a hint of lavender drifting from the nearby homes that cluster along the slope. Your boots press softly into the earth, and you become aware of the muffled quiet around you. Even the wind moves gently now, as if unwilling to disturb the peace settling over the land. To your right, a cluster of cottages stands close together, their thatched roofs thick and weatherproof against the damp of winter. Thin trails of smoke curl upward from the chimneys, carrying with them the scent of peat fires. Every so often, a wooden shutter creaks as someone inside adjusts it. Keeping the chill at bay, Alaric walks beside you, his gaze wandering to the tree line where the shadows deepen. There is a place, he says softly, that few visit at this hour. A small stone chapel, older than the village itself. His voice has a quality that suggests not just reverence, but a kind of quiet longing, the way one speaks of a place tied to memories they rarely share. You follow without question, allowing his words to guide your steps. The path begins to rise gently, curling around the side of a low hill. The grass here is sparser, giving way to patches of pale stone, their surfaces rough and weathered. You can hear the crunch of loose pebbles beneath your boots. At the crest of the hill, the view opens, revealing a modest stone chapel surrounded by an ancient grove of yew trees. The trunks twist in shapes that seem half-carved by time and half-shaped by the wind, their dark green boughs whispering against one another. The chapel itself is small, perhaps only enough to hold a dozen villagers at once, but there's an undeniable gravity to it. The stones are mottled with lichen, and thin veins of moss run between them. A wooden door, reinforced with black iron hinges, rests slightly ajar, moving gently in the breeze. Above it, A simple carving of a cross is set into the arch, weathered so much that its lines are softened, as though the centuries have been patiently smoothing its edges. You step inside and the air shifts cooler, stiller. The light filters through narrow stained glass windows, their colors muted by age. A faint scent of beeswax lingers, mingling with the dry dust of the stone floor. Candles flicker along a small altar, their flames bending faintly when you pass. It is not grand nor adorned with wealth. Yet there's a sense of quiet endurance here, as though this little chapel has simply continued to exist, untouched by the larger tides of history. Alaric moves toward one of the side benches, his fingers grazing the worn wood. "My grandmother used to bring me here," he says, almost to himself. "She would tell me the saints could hear our thoughts more clearly in the hush of winter." When the snow wrapped the village in silence, his words settle in the dim air, and you feel the truth of them. There is a peculiar kind of stillness in this place that invites reflection, even drowsiness. You sit together for a time, not speaking, Alina, letting the soft flicker of the candlelight and the muted colors of the glass work their slow magic. Outside, you can hear the faint rustle of wind in the yews, a sound like pages turning in a book. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls, not urgent but steady, marking the slow passage of time when you finally step outside again. The light has shifted further, edging toward the golden hue that comes just before dusk. The air feels colder now, brushing your cheeks with a crispness that speaks of night's approach. Alaric leads you down a different path, one that winds gently toward the riverbank. Here, the grass is damp underfoot, and a faint mist is beginning to rise from the water along the bank. Fishermen are packing away their nets, shaking the last drops of river water into the current before coiling the ropes neatly. Wooden boats, their hulls darkened by years of use, bob gently against the piers. The river reflects the fading sky, soft pinks and pale golds dissolving into a muted blue. And for a moment, you feel as though you are standing at the edge of a painting that is slowly being washed with night. Alaric pauses by the water's edge, crouching to pick up a smooth stone. He tosses it lightly, and it skips once before sinking. "In summer," he says, "children play here until the stars come out. In winter, the river belongs to the fog and the herons." His tone carries no sadness, only an acceptance of the seasonal rhythm. The way life bends and shifts with the turning of the year. You walk on, following the curve of the river as it leads toward a stand of willows. Their branches hang low, brushing the water's surface and the faint sound of the current threads through the air. A pair of swans drifts nearby, their white feathers glowing faintly in the dimming light. The quiet is deep here, yet it's the kind that soothes rather than isolates. Each sound, the water, the whisper of the willows, the occasional distant call of a bird blends into a soft tapestry that seems to slow your very heartbeat. By the time you reach the far bend of the river, dusk has fully arrived. The sky above is a deepening blue, and the first stars are beginning to show, faint pinpricks that promise a clearer night ahead. Alaric stops and looks up, his breath visible in the cooling air. "The stars will be bright tonight," he says. "If we go to the ridge above the fields, we can watch them rise." You follow him once more, climbing a narrow trail that winds upward through a patch of open land. The earth is firm underfoot, and each step brings you closer to the darkening horizon. At the top, the view opens wide. The village below is now just a scattering of faint, flickering lights, each one a hearth or candle within a home. Beyond, the river winds like a silver ribbon through the shadowed fields. The stars emerge slowly at first, then more quickly, until the whole sky feels scattered with them. They are sharper out here, far from the glow of torches or fires. You find yourself tracing the shapes of constellations almost without thought. Alaric points out one cluster, the one his grandmother told him guided travelers in winter, and his voice is quiet, almost reverent. The cold air settles around you, crisp and clean, And as you watch the slow wheel of the heavens, you feel time itself loosen its grip. The day has faded completely now, and with it the busyness of the world below. What remains is only this, the steady presence of another beside you, the calm of the landscape and the infinite patience of the stars. The night has deepened, and with it, the medieval world around you has grown even more hushed, as if the entire village and the surrounding lands have drawn a great, slow breath and now rest in gentle stillness. The sky above is a deep, endless blue-black, studded with countless stars, each one flickering with the faintest pulse of light as though trying to whisper its own long-forgotten story. A thin crescent moon hangs low over the horizon, casting silver across the frost-laced ground. And in that glow, every shape, the slanted rooftops, the bare-limbed trees, the cobbled lane that winds between them, seems softened. As if wrapped in a delicate veil, you walk slowly, feeling the air settle cooler against your cheeks, the gentle sting of winter hinting at the night's enduring strength. Somewhere in the far distance, the river moves, not with a loud, rushing surge of spring thaw, but with a muted, deliberate flow, slipping beneath patches of thin ice that have begun to form at its edges. Every so often, the surface shifts, breaking with a soft crack, and the sound is swallowed almost instantly by the surrounding quiet. Alaric, the young scribe, walks just ahead of you. His lantern swings slightly in his hand, the small flame inside shielded from the wind by a thin glass pane, its light casting an amber glow over the road and briefly catching in the frost crystals underfoot. That light, warm and human-made, feels like a small defiance against the deep cold. A reminder that within this still, ancient night, there is life humble, persistent life. You and Alaric are leaving the heart of the village now, taking the narrow track that leads toward the old stone bridge. The bridge is older than anyone in the village can remember. Some say it was built when this land was first settled, when the forest still stretched unbroken for days of walking and the river ran wild. The stones are uneven, worn by centuries of footsteps, but in the moonlight they seem almost luminous, the frost upon them glistening faintly like scattered pearls. Crossing it is a slow, careful thing. Your steps echo softly in the stillness, mingling with the faint creak of Alaric's leather satchel as he shifts it on his shoulder. From here, the river looks like a ribbon of shadow threaded through the white, dusted earth, and the sky above seems closer, as though you could reach up and touch the stars if you wished. Beyond the bridge lies a small rise in the land, and at its crest an ancient oak stands alone, even in winter, without its leaves. The tree commands a quiet reverence, its wide branches reaching out like the arms of an old guardian. Alaric pauses here, lantern light washing over the gnarled bark, and speaks softly, almost as if not to disturb the night. "My father used to tell me," he says, "that in the coldest winters, this tree was a gathering place. People would meet here to share news, to offer prayers for warmth and food." He smiles faintly, glancing toward you. It's strange to think how even in the harshest seasons, we find reasons to come together. From here, the path leads into the edge of the forest. The trees crowd close, their bare branches tangled against the sky, each trunk standing in a deep pool of shadow. Snow muffles your footsteps further, and the quiet grows even deeper. A few times you think you hear the faint rustle of small creatures in the undergrowth, perhaps a fox, or a hare moving with practiced care in the cold night. The scent of pine and damp earth lingers faintly, a reminder of the forest's slow, sleeping life beneath the frost. Alaric's pace is unhurried, his lantern's glow forming a soft halo that seems to pull the darkness back just enough for you both to pass. The forest is old, and there is a feeling here, not threatening, but watchful, as though the trees themselves have been witnesses to countless winters and still stand quietly, holding those memories in their rings. Eventually, you emerge into a clearing where the land dips gently toward a frozen pond. The moonlight spills fully across the ice, and for a moment it looks like a sheet of polished silver set into the earth. The air feels colder here, the frost more pronounced on the grasses at the pond's edge, and each breath curls in front of you like a pale ribbon before disappearing into the night. Alaric sets down his satchel and kneels briefly, brushing frost from a small wooden marker at the pond's side. "This," he says quietly, "was where my grandfather would come to fish before the pond froze. In the depths of winter, he'd come here still, not to fish, but to think." He said the ice made him feel the stillness more deeply. The two of you stand there for a while, not speaking, only watching the moonlight play over the ice. It feels like time has loosened here, like the usual movement of hours and minutes has slowed to a gentle drift. The cold nips at your fingers and the tip of your nose. But it's not unpleasant. It's a reminder that you are here, in this moment, wrapped in the deep, ancient quiet of a medieval winter's night. When you turn back toward the village, the return path feels subtly different. The lantern's light is now more golden against the darker forest, and the frost sparkles more brightly with each step closer to home. The bridge, when you cross it again, seems warmer underfoot, as if holding the faint memory of all the lives that have passed over it through the centuries. By the time the first rooftops of the village come into view, the stars have shifted slightly in the sky, marking the slow passing of hours. The smoke from a few chimneys curls upward, pale against the dark, and the faint smell of wood smoke drifts through the crisp air. Alaric walks you to the edge of the square, where the glow from a few lanterns still lingers, and the soft sound of a closing door carries from one of the cottages. The night here is not entirely silent. It is alive in a different way. The quiet hum of the wind between the houses, the faint creak of wooden beams settling in the cold, the distant bark of a dog, each sound a small thread in the fabric of this place. Woven over generations, you pause, looking back down the lane you've walked, and you feel an unspoken sense of belonging, as though even in this time far removed from your own. The rhythm of life here welcomes you in its own gentle way. Alaric nods once, a silent farewell for now, before turning toward his home, lanterns swinging gently at his side, and as you step into the softer glow near your own resting place, the thought lingers. Winter may be long and the nights cold, but within them lie moments of stillness, connection, and quiet beauty that belong as much to the heart as to history. The night has deepened now, and the medieval world around you has grown still, as though even the air itself has slowed its breathing. Snow rests lightly along the ridge of the thatched roofs, forming delicate outlines that glisten faintly under the pale light of the moon. The wind, which earlier whispered through the narrow lanes, has grown softer, as though it too is settling in for the long winter sleep. It is in this stillness that reflection comes most easily. The day's scenes, the quiet market, the low murmur of voices by the hearth. The frost-rimmed paths winding out toward the fields begin to drift through your mind not as separate moments, but as a tapestry woven together by the unchanging rhythm of life in the cold ages. Every detail, from the creak of a wooden door to the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air, feels like a thread in this greater fabric of history. You pause beneath the old stone archway at the village edge. In the daytime, this place would be bustling with those arriving and departing, their carts laden with goods, their boots caked with snow. But now it stands silent, the worn stones glowing faintly in the moonlight. You run your fingers gently over their surface and feel the cool, uneven texture, the result of countless seasons of frost and thaw, of hands brushing past over decades, even centuries, the people who lived here centuries ago. Their names, largely forgotten, have left behind more than stone and wood. They have left behind a way of life, quiet, deliberate, and deeply bound to the turning of the seasons. The cold ages were harsh, and survival required patience, skill, and resilience. And yet, within the challenges, there was beauty. The gathering of neighbors around a single fire, The shared effort of bringing in food before the snow made the roads impassable. The comfort of familiar rituals that marked each passing year. As you walk slowly through the narrow street, you notice how the shadows of the timber-framed houses stretch and shift in the moonlight. The snow crunches softly beneath your steps, the sound almost muted by the thickness of the air. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and then falls silent, as though reminded of the hour. A pale wisp of smoke still rises from a chimney, curling upward into the vast, star-filled sky. The stars themselves seem closer in winter, sharper against the black velvet of the heavens. In the medieval mind, these stars were more than distant points of light. They were signs, guides, and silent witnesses to every joy and sorrow that unfolded beneath them. Farmers measured the seasons by their positions. Travelers navigated unfamiliar roads by their patterns. Tonight, they shine with the same steady light they have given for millennia, unchanged as generations have come and gone. Perhaps they, like you now, found a moment of peace in the quiet, a reminder that even in a world of uncertainty, the stars would always return. Your path takes you past the church at the heart of the village, its small bell tower silhouetted against the winter sky. The wooden door is closed now, but you can almost hear the faint echo of the morning's prayers, the low, steady voices blending into one. In these times, faith was as much a part of daily life as the work in the fields. It offered comfort, a sense of order, and the hope that beyond the long winters and the lean years, there was meaning. You pause on the church steps, letting your hand rest against the cold stone. The building's walls, thick and worn, have sheltered generations from wind and snow. You picture the candlelight flickering within, casting soft halos against the walls, illuminating faces lined by age, and by you imagine the people who once stood here, centuries ago, gazing upward at this same sky. Hairs of toil. Here, the past feels less like something gone and more like something layered, as though time has been laid down in thin, translucent veils, each moment resting atop the other, never truly disappearing. From here, your steps lead you down a gentle slope toward the frozen river. In the moonlight, it glistens like a sheet of glass, its surface so smooth it seems untouched. In truth, the villagers will have tested it earlier in the season, breaking away the thinner ice near the banks, checking for dangerous cracks. By day, children might slide along its surface, their laughter carrying across the cold air. But now, it lies still, reflecting the stars above. You kneel for a moment at the river's edge, your breath clouding before you. The air is so quiet that you can hear the faint, deep groan of the ice shifting beneath its frozen surface, a sound that is both ancient and alive. It is a reminder that even in stillness, there is movement. Even in the coldest months, the world is never entirely at rest. As you rise and continue along the riverbank, your thoughts drift again to the lives that once filled this place. You picture the flicker of lantern light bobbing through the streets, carried by those making their way home after an evening of work or visiting friends. You imagine the smell of fresh bread baking in the communal oven, the warmth of a hearth after hours in the snow, the way a woolen cloak feels heavy on your shoulders after the day's labor. The further you walk, the more the village recedes into the background, until its shapes blend into the dark outline of the trees. Here, the forest stands tall and silent, its branches etched in frost. In the cold ages, such forests were both feared and respected. They offered firewood, game, and shelter. But they were also places of mystery, where the snow could hide the path and the night could make even familiar ground strange. You stop at the edge of the first trees, looking back at the village. The faint glow of the hearths is just visible, a cluster of warmth against the deep winter night. It feels distant now, almost dreamlike. And yet, this is the rhythm that would have been known to countless generations. The long, slow winter, the gathering of people and resources. The careful tending to what must last until spring. The wind picks up slightly, carrying with it the scent of pine and the faintest trace of wood smoke. It brushes against your cheek in a way that feels almost like a whisper, not urgent, not hurried, but as though the land itself is speaking softly, telling you that these winters, these lives, were part of something far greater than any one moment. As you turn back toward the path, the snow underfoot seems softer, the night deeper, and the sense of time more fluid. Past and present begin to blend in your mind until they are no longer separate at all. The medieval winter is not gone. It lingers here, in the stones, in the sky, in the quiet of the air. And in this stillness, you feel it, the connection to those who stood here before you. Their lives shaped by the same cold winds and the same steady light of the stars. The winter's grip, though steady, is no longer the fierce and biting thing it was at the season's heart. Now, as the days pass with a little more light, you can sense the first whispers of change stirring in the air. The village you have come to know, with its smoky rooftops, its winding lanes of frozen mud, its quiet hearths, seems to hold its breath in a strange kind of waiting. The snow still lies heavy on the thatched roofs, but icicles drip in the softer afternoon sun, their crystal tips catching flecks of gold as the light shifts. You pause at the edge of the main path, watching a cart roll slowly by. Its wheels groan in the deep ruts, but the driver, an older man bundled in layers of rough-spun wool, hums an old tune to himself. It is not a song for cheer exactly, but a song of endurance, the kind passed from parent to child in times when hope had to be kindled carefully, like a small flame shielded from the wind. His voice mingles with the soft creak of the wooden axle, and you realize that here even the smallest sounds seem to carry a certain weight, as though they are echoes of something much older than the moment. Alaric walks beside you, his breath misting faintly in the cold. The young scribe's face, usually alert and full of quiet curiosity, is today more pensive. He tells you, in his low and steady way, about the winters of his childhood, of how the cold seemed endless, how each day's tasks blurred into one another, and how the faintest sign of the thaw was greeted like the return of a long-lost friend. He remembers sitting by the hearth in his father's house, tracing patterns in the frost on the window with a fingertip, watching how the heat from the fire would slowly erase them. The image lingers in your mind, the small boy, the warm glow of firelight, the intricate lacework of ice slowly melting away. You find yourself thinking about how much of life in this age is about patience, the kind of patience modern eyes might never truly understand. Here, people live by the measured turn of the seasons, not by clocks or schedules. They are shaped by the land's generosity and its hardship, carrying both as a kind of inheritance as you continue your slow walk. The village begins to thin into open countryside. A frozen meadow stretches before you, its grasses trapped beneath a layer of ice. Beyond it, a line of bare trees stands like sentinels, their dark limbs etched against a pale sky. Somewhere in the distance, the muffled sound of an axe rings through the cold air, a steady, deliberate rhythm. Each strike followed by a long pause as the wood yields. Alaric gestures for you to follow him toward the riverbank. In winter, the water runs slower, and in places it has formed thick, glassy sheets over its surface. You kneel beside it, touching the edge of the ice. It is slick, smooth, and faintly luminous in the muted daylight. Beneath, you can hear the faint gurgle of water still moving, its persistence a reminder that life never truly stops. Even in the quietest seasons, it is here by the frozen river that Alaric begins to speak of history in a way that feels less like a recitation and more like a story passed between friends. He talks about winters centuries ago, harsher still than this one, when entire villages vanished under drifts and the stores of grain ran dangerously low. But he also speaks of the remarkable ways people adapted, how they learned to read the sky for signs, how they preserved food with salt and smoke. How neighbors shared what little they had so that no one faced the dark months alone. The way he speaks is not mournful, but reverent. You sense that in this world, hardship and community are inseparable. One calls forth the other, shaping bonds that last far beyond a single season. His words carry a rhythm that is almost like the lull of the river beneath the ice, steady, hypnotic, and warm despite the cold air curling around you. You find a fallen log at the edge of the bank and sit beside him. From here, the view is wide and uncluttered. The sweep of white meadow, the distant woods, the faint line of smoke from the village chimneys curling into the sky. Everything feels suspended in a perfect balance, still, yet quietly alive. A soft wind moves through the bare branches overhead, carrying with it the dry rustle of last summer's leaves still clinging to a few twigs. Their sound is brittle but oddly soothing, a reminder that each season leaves behind a trace of itself. You close your eyes for a moment and simply listen to the leaves. The river's muted voice, the distant chopping of wood, the slow creak of the cart now far along the road. All of it blends together into a single, hushed harmony that seems to exist outside of time. Alaric's voice comes again, softer now, as if sensing that your mind is drifting toward that calm border between waking thought and quiet reflection. He tells you of the stars in winter, how they appear sharper, colder, more steadfast in the night sky. He recalls nights when he would stand in the village square, the snow glowing faintly in moonlight, and look upward until he felt small enough to belong to the sky itself. In the cold months, he says, the stars feel closer, as if they too are leaning in to listen to our fires. There is a long pause after he speaks, filled only by the wind and the distant call of a bird. You feel the weight of his words settling like snow upon the mind light, but covering everything in their quiet way as you rise from the log. The two of you begin the slow walk back toward the village. The path feels familiar now, each bend and hollow like a page you have already read. Yet the light has changed since you came. The sun is lower, casting a pale amber hue over the snow. Shadows lengthen, stretching toward you as though eager to greet your return, passing by the first cluster of cottages. You catch glimpses of life within, a woman stirring something in a pot over the fire, her face lit gold by the flames. A boy sitting at a small table, carefully mending a leather strap with needle and thread. An elderly man seated by the window, simply watching the slow drift of snow outside. These are not moments of grandeur, yet they are the very essence of history. The quiet, enduring acts that make survival possible by the time you reach the village square again. The sky is deepening into a shade of muted violet. Smoke from the chimneys rises more thickly now as households prepare their evening meals. The smell of baking bread, rich and comforting, weaves through the crisp air. Somewhere nearby, you hear the soft bleat of a goat and the answering call of its kid from within a pen. Alaric pauses beside the well at the square center, resting his hands on the rim. He looks down into the darkness, where the faint reflection of the sky trembles in the water far below. "We draw from the same well my grandparents did," he says. "The same one theirs drew from. We all drink the same winter and the same spring." His words carry a quiet reverence, as if the well itself is a witness to centuries of lives, seasons, and stories. The bell from the small chapel rings once, its sound rolling gently through the square and beyond, fading into the frosty air. It is not a call to urgency, but a marking of time's soft passage, a signal that another day in this long winter is drawing to a close. And as you stand there, the thought settles in with a kind of tender certainty. This is not just a moment in history you are observing. You are walking within it, breathing its air, hearing its sounds, feeling its pace. The boundaries between past and present seem thinner now, as if the cold air itself has carried you into another time, where every simple act is both ordinary and sacred. The air has grown even softer now. the kind of stillness that settles over a land after the busiest hours of the day have passed. It is neither the deep darkness of night nor the golden vibrancy of morning, but that gentle in-between when light fades without hurry and time itself seems to slow. The village, which once bustled with the sounds of tools and laughter, now feels like a series of quiet echoes. Each moment a small remembrance of life as it once was and still is in subtle ways. From where you stand, you can see the outline of the thatched rooftops against a sky brushed in pale lavender. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys, not in hurried plumes but in languid ribbons, curling upward before dissolving into the cooling air. The fragrance of peat smoke mixes with the lingering scent of baked bread, the final loaves of the day having been removed from the oven before dusk. The air feels layered, not heavy, but holding the weight of memory. You can almost imagine the generations who stood in this same spot, breathing this same air, seeing the same slow shift of seasons. You walk the narrow path leading toward the edge of the village. The earth beneath your feet, uneven but familiar, as though the ground itself remembers the countless footfalls of those who came before. Here, at the farthest boundary, the cottages give way to open fields. In summer, these would be full of green shoots and the hum of insects. But now, in the late season, the land rests under a pale quilt of frost. Thin lines of fencing mark the edges, their posts weathered and rough from years of wind and rain. Some of the rails lean at angles, their shapes softened by moss dot in the stillness. You think of the people who once worked these fields from sunrise to sunset, their bent backs in the early morning mist, their hands raw from labor. Life here was never easy, and yet there was a deep rhythm to it, an unspoken agreement between people and land. The soil gave and they gave back, season after season. That exchange, that quiet persistence, is something that lingers in the air even now, long after those voices have fallen silent. You step off the path, boots brushing against stiff stalks left from the last harvest. Beyond the fields, a thin line of forest darkens as the sun dips lower. The trees stand tall and unmoving, their bare branches holding the soft afterglow of the evening sky like dark lace. The forest was always both a source of sustenance and a mystery to the villagers, a place to gather wood and hunt small game, but also a place of caution where the wind's whisper might almost sound like voices if you lingered too long in this moment. You imagine yourself centuries back, standing here as the first snow begins to fall. You see the same woods, the same cottages in the distance, the same wisp of smoke from the chimneys. Yet in that past, the air carries the sharper scent of wood smoke mixed with the unmistakable tang of freshly cut pine. For winter preparations would have been in full swing. Villagers would be hauling logs, thatching repairs made quickly before the frost deepened. And women would be salting meat to last through the frozen months. Life, in those days, was a constant act of balancing hope and survival. The winters were long, the nights endless, and every stored apple, every jar of grain, every woven blanket mattered. But here in your quiet walk, the weight of those worries is softened by distance. You are simply the observer, gently tracing the edges of their world without disturbing it, as you turn back toward the village. The sounds of evening emerge, a low murmur of voices from within cottages, the creak of a door's wooden hinge, the faint bark of a dog somewhere down the lane. They rise and fall like a lullaby, carrying no urgency, only the natural cadence of life winding down. You pass one cottage where the small round windows glow warmly from within. Through the glass you catch glimpses, a figure seated near the hearth, turning something slowly in their hands. A pot suspended over the fire, steam curling upward into the dim rafters. It's a scene unchanged for hundreds of years, a reminder that comfort has always been found in the simplest acts: warmth, nourishment, companionship. You pause for a moment, letting your gaze soften. The warmth of the fire within almost reaches you, though the air outside is cool on your skin. The scent of the hearth fire mixes with something faintly sweet, perhaps. The last of the season's cider being warmed for the night. It's a smell that carries a kind of reassurance, a signal that the day's work is over, and that for now, there is safety from the cold beyond the door. Continuing down the lane, you notice the way the shadows have lengthened. The lanterns that hang from the posts flicker to life, their flames moving gently behind oiled paper or horn panes. Their light is soft and golden, not harsh, and it falls in dappled patterns across the ground, pooling here and there before fading into the dark. You realize that this light would have been precious in the medieval night, not just for visibility, but for the sense of presence it brought. Each pool of light was a statement. Someone is here, someone is keeping watch, someone is still awake. The path eventually brings you back to the heart of the village, where the small central well sits in shadow. No one lingers there now. But earlier in the day, it would have been the meeting point, a place to draw water, exchange news, and perhaps pause for a few moments of laughter before returning to work. You rest your hand on the worn stone rim. It feels cool, smooth in some places from the touch of countless hands, rough in others where time has chipped away. The water below is still and dark, reflecting only the faintest glimmer of lantern light in the deepening quiet. You find your thoughts turning to how these lives, so distant in years, still echo into the present. The tools may have changed. The roads widened, the houses modernized, but the essential human moments, gathering around a fire, preparing for the cold, looking to the sky for signs of weather, remain the same. That continuity is a kind of thread woven through time, connecting you not only to these villagers, but to all those who came before. You close your eyes briefly, listening. The sounds are few, the wind moving softly through the eaves, the slow drip of water from the well's lip, a door closing gently. There is no rush here, no pressing call to action. Instead, there is a long exhale, as if the entire village is breathing in unison, settling into the embrace of the coming night as you open your eyes. The first stars have begun to appear overhead, faint pinpricks of silver scattered across the indigo sky. In the medieval world, these stars would have been familiar friends, guiding travelers and marking the seasons. Tonight, they seem to shine with a quiet clarity, their light falling upon rooftops, fields, and the forest beyond. You imagine the villagers looking up at the same stars centuries ago, perhaps feeling the same mix of wonder and reassurance that you feel now. Your steps slow even more as you begin to make your way toward the inn where the hearth will still be burning. You take in each detail of the night, the faint frost forming on the tips of grass, the gentle sway of the lantern light, the smell of the cold air mingled with wood smoke. Every sensation seems drawn out, elongated, as if time itself is offering you the chance to linger just a little longer in this place between history and dream by the time you reach the inn's threshold. The sounds outside have faded into near silence. You glance back once more at the village square, the well, the rooftops edged in frost. There's a stillness here that feels almost sacred, as though the land itself is holding its breath in the deepening night. And in that stillness, you feel the truth of it, though centuries may pass. The essence of these winter evenings, the quiet, the glow of light against darkness. The shared warmth of human presence will always remain. The snow outside has grown softer now, a light flurry replacing the heavier fall of earlier hours. From your seat beside the hearth, the faint glow of the embers flickers against the stone walls, dancing in long shadows that sway like memories come to life. The air smells faintly of smoke and pine sap, with the occasional crackle of wood reminding you that warmth here is never taken for granted. It is deep into the night, and the hall is quieter than before. Most of the villagers have drifted into slumber, their pallets set close together under heavy wool blankets, while only a few remain awake, speaking in low tones as if they fear disturbing the peace. You can hear the gentle breath of children sleeping nearby, a steady, reassuring sound in the stillness. Somewhere in the corner, an old dog shifts in its sleep, paws twitching as though chasing something in a dream. Alaric sits beside you, the soft parchment in his lap reflecting a faint gleam from the fire. His quill has been set aside for the night, but the stories he carries in his mind are still flowing, as if the turning of seasons is etched not only in ink, but in memory. "Do you ever notice," he says quietly, "how the winter teaches patience? Everything moves slower. And somehow that slowness feels like a lesson in itself." You nod, your eyes following the slow spirals of snow outside the small, square window. The flakes drift lazily under the moonlight, catching on the bare branches of the elm that leans toward the hall. In the far distance, a single owl calls, its voice carrying over the frozen fields, a sound both lonely and comforting. Like the echo of an old song, the conversation turns to winters past, the ones your grandparents may have spoken of in half-forgotten tales. Alaric describes a particularly harsh year long before his time, when the rivers froze solid from bank to bank, and the grain stores dwindled so low that the villagers ground bark into flour to stretch their bread. He speaks without drama, his tone soft and even, as though recounting a bedtime story rather than a memory of hardship. You can almost picture it, the way the villagers gathered, shoulder to shoulder, sharing thin soups and whatever they could spare. The firelight turning their faces into warm silhouettes against the deep chill outside. The hall seems to listen with you. Each creak of the old timbers overhead feels like a nod of agreement from the past. These walls have stood for generations, weathering storms, lean harvests, and seasons when the snow refused to melt until the spring floods came roaring in. It's humbling to think of how many winters have been survived here, each one folding into the next like chapters in a book whose ending is never reached. You close your eyes briefly, letting the sounds and scents weave around you. There's the low hum of the fire, the faint rustle of blankets as someone shifts in their sleep, the distant drip of water from melting icicles outside. Even the cold has a kind of presence here, not an enemy, but an unspoken guest that teaches resilience. Alaric's voice draws you back, his words moving slowly now, spaced apart like the slow tolling of a distant bell. He tells you about the old customs meant to carry people through winter's darkest days, the gathering of evergreens to hang over doorways, the carving of intricate patterns into candles to be lit during midwinter feasts, the quiet evenings spent teaching children songs and riddles so that knowledge would never be lost too. Silence. The picture he paints is gentle and unhurried. You imagine sitting in a room much like this one, but centuries earlier, with the same deep glow of firelight and the same hush of snow falling outside. The faces are different, the clothes unfamiliar, yet the rhythm of life is so much the same that you feel a strange kinship. With those long-gone winters, your gaze drifts once again to the snow. It falls steadily now, but in that hushed, almost invisible way that blurs the line between waking and dreaming. The world beyond the hall seems softened, wrapped in a blanket of white that muffles even the wind. Somewhere far off, you think you can hear the faint jingle of a bell, perhaps from a sleigh moving slowly along the frozen path toward the village. The sound fades almost as soon as it reaches your ears, leaving behind a pocket of stillness as the night deepens. The fire burns lower, its light growing softer, more golden. The shadows climb higher on the walls, and the air cools, urging everyone closer to the warmth. Alaric rests his head against the wall, his eyes half closed now, his words drifting into silence. Around you, the others are already deep in sleep. They're breathing in sync, a shared rhythm of rest. You feel a deep sense of continuity, the kind that word cell comes from knowing that this moment is part of a long chain of moments, stretching back through the centuries. Winter has always come, and winter has always been endured. There is comfort in that truth, just as there is comfort in the steady rise and fall of the breath beside you, in the weight of the wool blanket around your shoulders, and in the gentle heat that still radiates from the last embers in the hearth. The snow will still be falling in the morning. The fields will still be white. But for now, here in the quiet of this medieval hall, time seems to have slowed to match the rhythm of the season. Slow, deliberate, and endlessly patient. The last embers of daylight have long since vanished, replaced by the gentle silver of moonlight pooling across the quiet land. The world seems to hold its breath as though in respect for all that has come before, for the generations who lived through the era we have been walking through together. The wind tonight is soft, carrying with it the faint, distant scent of wood smoke from unseen hearths, and somewhere far off a slow creak of a wooden sign sways on its iron hook. The village is still now, but in your mind it remains full of life. You picture the cobblestone lanes we explored, narrow and uneven, worn by countless footsteps over centuries. You remember the marketplaces, once ringing with the sounds of merchants calling out their wares, the chime of coins exchanging hands, and the low murmur of conversation weaving through the crisp winter air. Even though the physical space lies in silence now, the memory of it is vibrant. The echoes of those voices feel almost tangible, like the faint warmth of a fire that still lingers after the flames have died. There is something deeply moving about the way time softens the edges of hardship. The people who lived in those winters long past, who endured cold, scarcity, and the unrelenting pace of the seasons, also knew joy. In their laughter during the communal gatherings, in the way children chased each other across the snow-packed streets, in the music that would rise from a single fiddle on festival nights, there was light. There was always light. Even in the harshest winters, humanity found ways to keep a spark alive as you walk along the moonlit road, your breath forming small clouds in the night air. You can imagine the footsteps of those who came before trailing alongside yours. Each step feels heavier with the weight of their stories, yet lighter with the comfort of knowing that survival, in every age, is stitched together by ordinary people doing extraordinary things without even realizing it. A mother setting aside a crust of bread for her child. A craftsman repairing a neighbor's roof before the first heavy snow. Friends gathering to share what little they had, not because they could afford to, but because it was the only way to endure. The road leads you to the crest of a low hill, where the village spreads out beneath you like a painting, rooftops etched with frost, chimneys sending thin, curling lines of smoke upward to meet the stars. You stand here for a long while, watching the sky, noticing how the constellations seem brighter in the winter air, each one crisp and clear, as though polished by the cold. It's easy to imagine the villagers looking up at the same constellations centuries ago, perhaps whispering the same old stories about their shapes and meanings. Time, in this moment, feels less like a line and more like a circle. The hush of the scene invites you to think not only of what was lost, but also of what was preserved. Winter demanded resilience, yes, but it also cultivated traditions, recipes passed down through generations, ways of mending and making do. Songs and tales told by firelight that could outlast the biting winds outside. These are the threads that survived, weaving together the past and the present. You picture the final night of a long, hard winter, when the first signs of thaw begin to appear. Perhaps a thin trickle of meltwater slides down the side of a frozen barrel, or the sharp scent of damp earth rises faintly through the snow. That moment, small as it may be, would have been a reason to hope. And hope is what has carried people through every winter, every famine, every uncertain year as you begin your slow walk back toward the heart of the village. The stones beneath your feet feel familiar now, as though they have welcomed your passage and accepted you into their quiet history. You pass by the outlines of doorways, shutters closed against the cold, the glow of firelight flickering just faintly through the cracks. Inside, families sit together much as they always have, leaning close, speaking in low tones, sharing the warmth of a space that has seen both hardship and celebration. You realize that survival in these cold ages was never about one person's strength alone, but about the web of connection that bound the community together. It was in the shared meal, the extra log on a neighbor's fire, the simple act of keeping an eye out for one another. In a time when the elements could be merciless, kindness became the most enduring form of shelter. You pause near the edge of the square, where the old well stands, its stones slick with frost. It has been here for as long as the village has existed, and will likely stand for centuries yet to come. How many hands have drawn water from it? How many stories have been told beside it? The thought brings a kind of peace, a sense that even as lives come and go, certain places hold the imprint of everyone who ever passed through. The wind stirs gently, and you close your eyes for a moment, listening to its low hum between the buildings. It feels like a song, not one with a clear beginning or end, but an endless melody that belongs to the land itself. You think about how many winters it has sung through, carrying the whispers of countless nights like this one. Now, as the night deepens and the moon begins its slow descent, the reflections soften into something more dreamlike. You picture the villagers not as ghosts of the past, but as neighbors in a different time, separated from you only by the thin veil of years. Their lives, their struggles, their small moments of joy, all of it feels closer now, as if you could step through that veil at any moment and join them by the fire. The square grows quieter still, the last light fading from the windows, and a deep stillness settles over the stones. You let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of the night. The cold is no longer biting, only crisp and fresh, and you feel cocooned in the soft weight of your cloak. In the silence, you can almost hear the heartbeat of the village itself, steady, patient, enduring. The journey is nearly complete, but there is no rush. In this suspended moment, the past and present feel like threads in the same tapestry, woven together so seamlessly that you cannot see where one ends and the other begins. This place and the people who lived here will stay with you. They are part of your story now, just as you have become part of theirs. With one last glance at the frost-lit rooftops, you turn toward the quiet path that will lead you out of the village. The stars above burn softly, keeping watch as they always have, and the wind follows you, carrying the lingering warmth of everything you have seen, felt, and remembered. Soon, the details will blur into the gentle haze of sleep, but the feeling, that deep, unshakable connection to lives once lived, will remain. The journey has been long, dear traveler. From the crisp air of medieval winter mornings to the quiet glow of lanterns along snow-lined streets, you have walked through a world that now begins to soften, dissolve, and fade gently into the stillness of rest. The fires have burned low in the hearths of the village. Their last embers give off a quiet, pulsing glow. The scent of wood smoke lingers like the memory of the day itself, delicate and comforting. The world around you slows. The wind, once a whisper against the eaves, now hums low and steady, a lullaby in the language of nature. The crunch of boots on frost is gone. The chatter of distant voices has settled. There is only the rhythmic beat of your breath, slow and deep, drawing in warmth, letting go of tension. You are safe. You are warm. You are home. The wooden beams overhead cradle the space like protective arms, and you feel the softness of the bed beneath you, thick wool blankets wrapped close, the faint scent of clean straw from the mattress below, and perhaps just a hint of lavender that someone tucked into the linens earlier in the season. The medieval world, with all its crisp air, slow, hearth-cooked meals, and gentle candlelight, becomes a part of you, a chapter in your dreams. Now, the story itself loosens its hold, and you drift from history into rest. The shapes of the village blur, the sturdy cottages with their thatched roofs, the twisting lanes, the frozen stream under the moonlight. They soften into a haze, like frost melting in the morning sun, Your body grows heavier, your breath deeper. Inhale, long and slow. Exhale, letting go of everything. Imagine a warm light surrounding you. Perhaps the golden light of a candle, steady and safe. With each breath, that light expands, filling every corner of your being, melting away the chill, the weight, and any remnants of wakefulness. You are no longer standing on a road in the winter night. You are drifting, floating, supported entirely. You are safe. You are warm. You are home. The snow outside falls gently now. You can almost hear it, a soft hush against the thatched roofs. Each flake settles quietly, patting the earth in silence. There is nothing more to do, nowhere to go. Only this moment, this breath, this rest. The medieval village is still here, somewhere in the folds of your mind. The baker's oven will glow again in the morning. Alaric will carry his parchments. The woodcutters will tread into the snowy woods. But for now, the village sleeps. The whole world sleeps, and so do you. The candle's flame flickers in your mind's eye, slower, slower, until it is only a warm glow in the darkness. The sound of the wind fades, replaced by the soft tide of your own breathing. Your arms grow heavy. Your legs sink deeper into the mattress. Your eyelids drift closed. In this moment, the journey is complete. You have walked through snow-dusted lanes, stood under starlit skies, warmed your hands by the fire. You have heard the quiet voices of the past, felt the textures of another time, and now? You let it all rest. Breathe in. Breathe out. You are safe. You are warm. You are home. The last traces of the cold ages dissolve into the gentle fog of dreams, carrying you deeper, deeper into a place where time no longer matters, where the story waits for you to return, but only after you have rested, fully and deeply. In the distance, or maybe only in your imagination, a bell rings softly, once, twice, as though marking the close of the day. The sound fades into stillness, and the stillness cradles you. The cold air outside is only a memory now. Inside, you are surrounded by warmth, wrapped in it completely. Every muscle in your body releases its hold. Your jaw softens. Your shoulders melt into the bed. Even your hands rest loosely. Without effort, you are drifting now, floating, weightless. The journey is over, and the night will keep you safe until morning. The medieval world is far away, and yet close enough to return to whenever you wish. All you need to do is close your eyes, breathe deeply, and remember the glow of candlelight, the hush of snow, and the comfort of a world where everything moves slowly, gently, peacefully, now. Rest, now. Sleep, now. Dream, you are safe. You are warm. You are home. Good night, traveler. Good night.